same old boy from the same old house. My, how much you've grown, such a shame you'll die alone. It's been so long, but the time has come. If only I knew, I should have known it would be you. Now I don't mean to alarm you, but these toys are far too much for you. Now I aim to take what is mine, and now there's only one thing left to do now. It resonates, so take it all. You're just in time to see the fall. You leave me out of sounding call. Now you've lost it all. Called you the hero of a time. You're just a thief, took what is mine. Our fates were always intertwined, and soon you'll find that I will be your king. I was young, I had always known the barren desert that I roam. You could never understand how it feels to be alone. But I was meant to rule this world. You better say goodbye. And now you're standing in my way. And now I need my room to fly. Now I don't mean to alarm you, but these toys are far too much for you. Now I aim to take what is mine, and now there's only one thing left to do now. It resonates, so take it all. You're just in time to see the fall. You leave me out of sounding call. Now you've lost it all. Called you the hero of a time. You're just a thief, took what is mine. Our fates were always intertwined, and soon you'll find that I will be your king. You will see true suffering. Together we make three, so you're always stuck with me. My hate will cycle and will soon be born anew. It resonates, so take it all. You're just in time to see the fall. You leave me out of sounding call. Now you've lost it all. Called you the hero of a time. You're just a thief, took what is mine. Our fates were always intertwined, and soon enough, my phrase is I will be your king. Be my king.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to. Whoa, that's weird. Okay, we glitched for a second, but we're back. Welcome to the Fan Battle Cast, where we cover the pitches that were pitched to the Death Battle team. One of the pitches we found out about that a lot of us are very excited about is Ganondorf versus Sauron. This has been a good amount of us one of our favorite matchups, and I'm very happy to have this group of people specifically because I know. A lot of us have been talking about this matchup in particular for a long time, so I'm very excited about this. With me today, I'm your host as usual. I'm the Santi Sherm, and with us today we have our usual homie, the Dark Lore Master. Say hi.
What's up? I'm eating a pizza right now.
You might know them from various My Little Pony or Tolkien scaling blogs. We have the delightful MKF4. Say hi.
Hello. Empty Moat dragged me here kicking and screaming, so I dragged Advert here kicking and screaming with me. I'm just here mainly to talk about Tolkien and Legend of Zelda because
you're welcome.
I actually hate both franchises, so I'm here to nerf.
Yeah, we're here to spite each other. We're not actually here to debate.
Here due to popular demand, we have Advert.
Popular demand. I mean, hi.
Well, I'll be honest. Pulling back the curtain. I don't know who you are, but the people in this call wanted you, so here you are.
He helped kill Metal Sonic, so he gets to be.
Oh, yeah, I did do that.
What was Metal Sonic?
He
Dead.
helped kill Metal Sonic with the fan battle. That was fun.
Oh,
fun.
that's how they might know you. Okay.
I can't believe you just
now you know.
We're gonna get lots of angry fan mail for that one.
You're just putting him on blast.
Here's his
So
IP
if
address.
you want
Go.
to send hate to Advert, make sure to go to our PO box in order to send your hate, and we will read it on stream with Advert.
If you want a rematch, go arrive at his house to demand it.
And if that stream gets 10,000 likes, we will publicly execute Advert.
Wow!
So make sure to hit that like
Okay.
and subscribe for more content. Let's get into it.
Someone I'm particularly happy to have on the stream today, Ganondorf. I actually knew him before I even joined the Death Battle Discord, so I think he's actually one of the internet homies I've known for the longest out of anyone here. It's Ganondorf. Say hi.
Well, that's very sweet of you. I'm just a little fanboy right now, just talking about series I like. So that's what we're here for.
We're all just little fanboys at the end of the day.
Also finishing up this little bowl of spaghetti. I need to
the
get back
screen
on that.
is frozen. That's weird.
He has priorities.
Is everyone here eating?
No.
I'm gonna eat.
I think
No, that's
I've
Not
done
yet,
both.
anyway.
I made it before.
Retweet.
I got a
I
pepperoni
have some cookies, but I'm saving those for later.
and a brownie. I'm fucking chilling.
And last but not least, we have representing
least.
Ganondorf. We have the Hylian Kerbo. Say hi.
Oh wait, I don't think this works. What the hell, y'all?
Oh, there we go. There you are.
Oh, here it goes.
Just say hi, please.
Oh, hey, what's up? Oh, hello.
Say hi. Oh my god, dude.
This is it's kind of nice to get the gang all back together. If anyone didn't know, like me, Dorky, Kerbo, and MKF4 actually worked on the Core versus Majora blog, and that was a very fun time to work on. I honestly contributed to it the least. I was just kind of hanging out, but I'm in the credits, so it counts.
It's funny timing because we're actually very close to that blog's 1-year anniversary of releasing. So,
Oh,
Hey.
are we actually?
Oh, yeah, I think I helped out with some of MK's
And
arguments.
We will have
It's a
Advert
big
put a block to
blog reunion.
had to put that blog in the description for everyone to read.
Yeah.
later.
I wasn't there, but like that blog
Yeah, no, this-
I know really sucks actually. I hate it, and you all should send your hate mail and we'll read it.
Oh my word! Here we go again.
So,
5 out of 6 people here are familiar. Then there's just him.
Something
One
interesting
guy
with
that
this.
wasn't a big fan of Dark Lord in the videos. You might be getting what you want to.
Something
Yeah, I'm really
to
proud of
keep
that
in
blog.
mind with this debate is Sauron and Ganondorf. They both have a lot of different versions. They both have a lot of different like states at which they have varying power levels. So I'd like to kind of put some ground in the beginning, kind of specify what we're working with. MK, what version of Sauron are we dealing with today?
I was just going to use Sauron at his pinnacle when he's the strongest. I mean, I'm not using Dirt Age Sauron when he's just a giant flaming
No,
eyeball.
just
I think he means
boring.
version.
At what point is Sauron the strongest? I assume this isn't like pre ghostly Sauron.
Oh yeah, no.
From the
that
Lego
was
Batman
fair.
movie.
True. We are going to be using Sauron as he appears in Lego Dimensions, complete with full DC cross
What the
scaling.
hell?
Let's go.
No, jokes aside, it would probably be during the period of the Silmarillion and the appendices of Lord of the Rings, when Sauron has just finished constructing the One Ring and is at the maximum of his power. So basically, when he has access to all of his abilities, he has the One Ring still with him, and all of his magic is still active. So we're not going to be using a weakened Sauron today, because that wouldn't be much fun.
Ganondorf's a little more interesting.
Effectively,
in terms of like what he's allowed to have. What will we be giving Ganondorf today for this cast?
The Smash Bros. Amiibo.
I think that would just instantly get him a loss.
It's okay. I think you can do it. I believe in him.
Actual material is usable, just barring like full Triforce and stuff.
Okay.
I think the stipulation is just every game version with Gloom, and that's really like the whole of it.
Well, most of the arguments I was constructed was mostly just the 3D titles. So that's like Twilight Princess mainly, some Tears of the Kingdom as well. But honestly, most of the arguments kind of aim on the 3D titles, with some 2D support here and there from only some of the arguments.
Okay.
Honestly,
Yeah,
I'm not really worried about it.
So he's focused on primary canon with support from primary canon.
Exactly.
So it'd be like
Like, just
Ganondorf
primary.
gets stuff from like all of his main game appearances, basically.
Pretty much
Yeah,
like how he'd
usually.
appear like
I'm
an
not-
actual episode.
Kind of like how Death
Right, I'm
Metal
not-
do it.
I'm not considering Hyrule Warriors because why would I?
Okay.
I would use Age of
Because it'd be
Calamity,
really
however.
cool.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Calamity's fine. I have no objection
I
to
think
that.
Age of Calamity to an extent, so long as it doesn't contradict the original. Because like, there's some times where one of them will do some like wacky tacky bullshit that they've never shown in, like the original game, like somehow just slowing time.
Well, to be fair, Age of Calamity
like-
did have a timeline split, and that is somewhat, dubious at its best. But that is an alternate universe, and point is, just the main stuff from Age of Calamity is fair game for the Mal stuff.
Okay.
Usual rules
fair.
then.
Now, I would like to say a lot of people are kind of first-time casters today. A rule we try to have with the Fan Battle cast is we really try to respect the 1v1. So I know all of us could have various opinions on points in terms of scaling, in terms of other aspects of the characters, but as jurors, we are not meant to like represent the characters. We are only meant to like ask questions. So I would like to ask we keep that in mind for this cast, because I feel like this will be very divisive.
Makes sense.
And I think we can jump right in. Hylian Kerbo requested he go second, and that was the first request, so I'm going to honor that. I would say Hylian's got dibs. That means MK, I will give you
Got
your
it.
60 seconds first. Let me just.
Oh wait, am I introducing the character or just getting right into arguments?
This
Starting
is your
we
60
know the
seconds
characters.
to do whatever you will with.
You can, like, kinda introduce
Don't use it to
character.
introduce the characters, please.
I'm gonna wait till the timer starts. Why is it on Kerbo?
Because I'm
I
not
guess
a
it's
dragon,
mine.
it's not-
We need
not
to
doing
We just
that.
want to see Kerbo.
There
Yeah,
we go.
we wanted
Like,
to
you-
see
Reaction
Kerbo.
to each argument.
Yeah,
so
you can still talk.
You can do whatever you want with the 60 seconds. It's just purely.
We're just gonna keep looking at
uninterrupted.
Kerbo.
You can say
MK, quick
whatever.
Fortnite dance.
All right, good.
All right, well, I'm here to represent Sauron, the greatest villain in all of fictional history, and I'm mainly here to argue that the stats for the two generally, while are something we're focusing on, I think as a general rule of thumb, you can make similar arguments with either side, if not superior for Sauron, and that basically anything Ganondorf could throw out, or Ganon if you want to go there, Sauron has a way to counter, survive, resist, or just otherwise negate, while Ganondorf does not have answers for many of Sauron's wide and varied hacks, especially those revolving around his Einar spirit. I believe that Sauron is simply just far better equipped to outlast Ganondorf, overpower him, outmaneuver his abilities and hacks, and just get through any magical defenses Ganondorf might have, proving Sauron, of course, to be the superior Dark Lord that we all know he is.
All right. Not bad, not bad.
Yeah, I've seen worse.
Turbo, you are up to bat. You have 60 seconds.
I've
to
seen
explain why you think
Yeah.
Ganondorf wins. It will
All
start
right,
when
well,
you
I just
start
start
talking.
whenever. All right, Ganondorf. I think he will win not only due to the superior stats, which even if you assume equalization, there's just a lot of myriad ways that Ganondorf can take the stats trinity. I also know of several win cons, mostly factoring stuff like Bloom, superior regen, and also addressing the fact that Sauron has many flaws within his actual regenerative capabilities. Not only that, but I'd like to point out that the Honor Spirit stuff, which that's probably going to be the whole crux of the argument, is actually debated and kind of countered by the Triforce stuff. I'm not factoring full Triforce, but there's no way Sauron can bypass the stats, gloom, but also the regenerative capabilities. And also just a myriad of hacks, honestly.
Well, that was fun.
I would just like to point out that I talked to both of them, and the first thing I said was, all right, MK, do not rely heavily on Einer's Spirit. All right, Kerbo, do not rely heavily on Gloom. And the first thing they said,
Hey, gloom is a
they did not
supporting.
hesitate.
They know what they're doing.
I said stats first. What is he going on about? Adver out here lying.
Yeah,
Draw
I'm
him
sure.
off the jury. Draw him off the jury.
I guess I'm leaving.
So, just in case anyone in the audience doesn't actually know much about these guys or how they fight, like, how do Sauron and Ganondorf normally fight? Like, what is their fighting style or general plan of
Standard
attack
tactics.
look like?
Actually, I compiled a list about standard tactics. I actually wrote it all down, honestly.
Perfect.
I pretty much went through every game to see like how this dude fights. Let me find actually the paragraph for which I sent that. It's more concise.
I feel like I should have like a Jeopardy music sound effect.
Yeah.
Here it is. I have found it. I read it. I
Alright, that
literally
was
went through every.
Kerbo,
I
are
literally
you
went through
like
every single
rubbing
game.
your mic on something?
I really fucking hope not. But no, it's just my
Okay.
mic sucks.
Oh, okay.
How does
Just
this
thought I'd
sound
ask.
anyway?
I'm not even using a mic and they hear me better.
Right. All right. Standard tactic for Zelda 1: intangibility, spam constant, invisible teleports, magic, all into the past, spam teleports, magic, fire magic, summons, and trident. Ocarina of Time, magic, bomb rush you, and honestly, he kind of just balls. Oracle games, spam intangibility, teleports, surprise attacks, trident, and more magic. Twilight Princess, accurately sword fight you, bomb rush you with beast, spam interdimensional teleports, and also attempt some hacks like possession. Low rule, spams teleport, reappears with intangibility, invisibility. So we're getting a constant theme of we spam teleport, we come out of those teleports with stabbing you with a trident. Age of Calamity,
Constant hit and run.
yeah, right. Bomb rush with magic, slashes, spamming invincibility. I wonder where we heard that one before. Which I'd also like to
was it Zelda?
It
No.
was Zelda. But unfortunately, Age of Calamity does have the interesting stuff with the invincibility only being negated by the Triforce that Zelda had. So that's the first Age of Calamity argument. Tears of the Kingdom. He's a master with every known weapon. He flurry rushes you with spear, sword, club, arrows, and a lot of blue magic. So, to summarize everything, basically, this man will effectively teleport you, turn into a shadow, and hit you from the back in the best way possible.
Sauce.
Pretty effective game plan.
Sus.
Alright, so
How does
yeah, this is something
Sauron
for
fight?
Ganon.
Sauron's fighting style is generally rather consistent, though it does sometimes vary depending on like what powers he has available at the time and what body forms he's able to take. In a similar fashion to our pig-based opponent for the day, Sauron does generally like to utilize things like teleportation. I guess you could call it sort of like a shadow form as well, disappearing and reappearing. Those are all things he also utilizes, so they're probably pretty even in that regard. When higher forms of power, Sauron will also sing. That may not sound impressive, but singing is generally a major conduit of their magical abilities in Middle Earth, so it's basically just a more complicated form of their magic. Sauron specializes in mace and sword-based combat and has a wide array of being able to summon or generate maces and swords and various weapons to his side at any time. So basically, Sauron can mix and match with all sorts of different magical and melee-based tactics at will, also utilizing more of his hack-based abilities depending on the opponent or what the scenario is at the time. Against weaker opponents, he's probably just going to utilize more of just clubbing them with the mace, while if an opponent generally displays more potent abilities, that's usually when Sauron is going to break out more of his magical capabilities while still utilizing swordplay or a mace. Even works really. I mean, and hitting them really hard with a mace, I'd say, is still a good tactic. So pretty similar to Ganon in a lot of ways, with Sauron generally gauging it depending on what sort of threat he thinks the opponent is at the time.
Difference being that Sauron spits
Like a pretty
bars.
Distraction tactic. Just bust out a song in the middle of the fight, and like, what do you do at that point?
Battle, by the way. It's like
Okay, I got my SoundCloud.
It just starts rapping.
This is probably a very this is
Yeah,
probably
my
a
name
point
is
that
Sauron.
doesn't even matter in the big scheme of the debate. But I am kind of curious, who do y'all think would be more skilled between the two if they actually just had a weapon fight to start with?
Actually,
Well, I mean, that's literally what's
Right.
going to happen.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what's going to happen at first. Is a skill
Yeah, it's
debate.
just that's what the first question is automatically.
Kerba, do you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
you can go first. That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. Generally, between the two, I actually don't think there's going to be a super massive skill gap in either's favor, which I guess debating for Sauron, I should probably try to kick Ganon around or something, but no, I actually think they're generally pretty comparable. Ganon, there's the statement in Tears of the Kingdom that Ganon knows basically every known weapon, which you can take that as you will, as hyperbole or what have you, but the point is he is known to be very skilled. He can keep up with Link just fine, and that doesn't need any elaborating on. We all know how skilled Link is. Ganon is a very capable fighter, capable of using a wide array of weapons. Ganon's weapon array skill is probably larger than Sauron's, given Sauron mainly just uses swords and maces. But on the flip side, Sauron does have a lot more time of actual combat under his belt and against a much wider array of foes. Most of Ganon's battles are generally just against Link, Zelda, more Links and more Zeldas, maybe one or two random people he one-shots every so often, or bullying Vati or what have you. Sauron does have a much wider array of opponents he has faced with much wider abilities. Ganon technically has more weapons specialty. Sauron has more experience across a much wider array of time because Ganon is usually sealed and isn't fighting during that time, while Sauron is always active. So I think you could probably argue they're relatively similar in a lot of ways, with Sauron having advantages and facing more opponents with more variety and different abilities, and fighting across a much wider period of time, while Ganon is more specialized in a wider array of weapons and has more specialized experience against fighters like Link or Zelda.
So to combat that, sorry if I'm not Mike, is being funny. You mentioned that Sauron has superior experience, which given based upon the 24,000 time years gap, there's a lot of time Sauron has a lot of under his belt. But I would like to point out most of that time, which by the way, it's kind of similar to Ganon, but most of the time before coming to EA or EA, I'm not really quite sure how to pronounce it. That's EA, right?
EA Sports. It's in the
In the
game.
game.
It's in the game. Now, while he was in the game, he was mostly his true form was mostly capable of the singing and the tonal, the manipulation, which I'm gonna reference Elder Scrolls a little bit.
Oh my word.
But look,
Oh God.
his singing is intrinsically familiar to the Elder Scrolls tonal manipulation, which I find really fascinating. But anyway, that is mostly a core of manipulation of reality, not really quite a combat thing that he was doing. Sure, he was, bullying other Mire and, potentially helping with the cosmos of the universe, but a lot of that was kind of a chaotic, discordant kind of type of deal. When he first comes into conception, let's just look at the actual feats of what he gets bested by. I mean, I know you're not using first age. Actually, okay, we're not using third age, right? Third age is weak.
We're basically using everything, but he doesn't really have any direct combat showings into Dirt Age to go off of anyhow. So it's take that as you will.
So first age, he gets bested by Luthien Huan during battle, or I guess the Tale of Tinuga? No, I'm not crazy. It was during the War of Wrath. Point is, Sauron, he ruled this, Isle of Werewolves, and Luthien and Huan, the Hound of Valinor, confronted him, and he physically defeated him in combat. Luthien broke his will, and Sauron fled in humiliation, right? Abandoning his body and fortress. And this is a kind of a reoccurring theme with Sauron. if you beat his physical form, 90% of the time he's going to run away and reform in Mordor. And that's kind of the thing. Second Age, captured and brought to Nemours. Now, before we mention the fact that the king, he did a tactical surrender, I would like to point out he did surrender based upon the preface that he wanted to manipulate, but his original goal was to take over Numenor. You know, sure, King Fazron, which, by the way, these names are really hard to pronounce. If I mess them
No,
up,
I
I'm
get so. You're fine.
right? Like, all right. So King Azron, when he landed with his massive fleet, Sauron's entire army just surrendered without fighting, because he realized he could not win the actual combat, right? But look, Sauron, I will give him 10 credits, because he is really versatile in, like, oh shit, my plan is fucked. Might as well just flip side and do something else with manipulation. And that's kind of a tactic he likes doing. He does to strategic defeats in, the Second Age, right? But I also like to note that most of his actual combat experience with people, he has been bested several times, especially during the last alliance in Shore. He was weakened, but still, Gilgalad and Elendil still bested him in direct combat, even with the ring. And I like to point out, Ganondorf has a lot more actual combat experience. Sorry if my tangent is a little long. Like, if you guys
No,
want
you're
to
fine.
This is important.
right. Anyway, point is, as I was saying,
Debating in this
Ganondorf
versus debate, man.
oh my god, he's talking. How could he?
Oh, what are you doing debating here?
But as I say, Ganondorf has an actual better combat ability because he faces I'll give him credit. He only faces Link, Zelda, Vati, and a few other beings, right? But he does have not only the similar skill, which, by the way, the Tears of the Kingdom statement it should not be taken as hyperbole, because in the past there was an age of war demons, right? And his original goal in Tears of the Kingdom is actually to revert the world into the age of demons and war, so he can find the thrill of battle. He's really focused on the thrill of battle, so he does genuinely master all these aspects and attributes of his combat. But
You
also
said Tears of the Kingdom statement. Did you actually say what that statement was?
That's the
Oh,
one
yeah.
about him knowing every single weapon.
Sorry, let me
All
make that
right.
clear. But yeah, so he does face off Link, who I would argue is a much more skilled combatant than anything Sauron has actually fought before. And sure, being bested by elf kings and humans, being comboed, that's great and all. But I would like to point out, Link is a master he is a master swordsman. He has years of experience under his belt. He has beaten trained soldiers when he was 4. That's an old statement in I think it's Breath of the Wild. I had to source it. But he has beaten trained swordsmen when he was younger. He has not only accumulated so much more experience and he's much more of a potent combatant not Sauron, my bad. For Ganondorf than Sauron has ever faced before individually, especially since he's been bested by people who just have a lot less experience than he. So to summarize, Ganondorf just has a better array of experience dealing with actual competent swordsmen, especially when the swordsman has thing that is made to kill you fully. And it also negate most of your magical regen, so he has to focus on the skill first, especially in Twilight Princess, where he literally physically confronts Link and Zelda, and actually comes out on top in terms of the mid-note aspect.
So the idea is
So-
basically Ganondorf has a better track record against
Oh yeah,
opponents that are
absolutely.
relatively skilled are at a relative skill level as him versus Sauron,
Right.
who doesn't have nearly as good of
Right,
a
so
track record.
And the issue is with Sauron is that every time he was bested, he didn't use his spiritual form, and that's kind of the key point here. He didn't use his spiritual form to hack them away or blow them away. No, it is literally stated verbatim. He ran away to Mordor to regenerate his body. Hell, even during the downpour of Numenor, which, by the way, is not spectral in nature in terms of the resistances that he gets from it. I'll go over that point later. He died by this, he was melted into the sea and crushed effectively. His spirit rose. But point is, he was like he took over 1,000 years to reform his body. There was a large time gap between the fall of Numenor and the actual second age where he, or not second age, where the actual following age where he did appear again. So he takes a long time to regenerate, and when he is bested, he just runs away because he knows he can regenerate again.
Okay. Do we
It's
want to
been
kind of
MKS.
get into the hacks and abilities they would employ when they realize like normal physical combat isn't working, or would we rather go into stats? How are y'all feeling?
To be honest, are
Uh,
you asking like the jurors or the debaters? Because
I'm
I
kind of
was
from what
asking
wondering
the
I'm
either.
gathering,
debaters.
whatever.
Kerbo, what are you wanting to cover?
Honestly, I'm fine with you doing whatever. I'm chilling, man.
All right. Well, I would point out on Kerbo's notes, he does mention the first feat of Sauron's defeat being to a creature named Huan. He didn't mention it, but that particular defeat did have some context that was not brought up. Sauron had already battled and defeated the elf prince Felagund in a rather prolonged magical showdown that used a lot of power up to that point, and he wasn't exactly losing to an ordinary dog. Huan was the hunt dog of the Valar, basically angelic beings far superior to what the Maiar, which is what Sauron is, were, and Huan was used to fighting alongside the Valar in their battles and adventures. So, and losing to Huan in a very close battle, mind you, that wasn't just losing to some random giant dog. He was losing to a divinely enchanted, supernatural, super experienced dog that had been battling with beings far beyond what Sauron normally encountered. So I don't think that's exactly the most fair anti-feat to utilize.
Best
I
was
would say
Wiki
he's
on here.
werewolf fire, of course. To address that, part of the issue with Sauron is that if he uses a lot of his abilities beforehand, or okay, so from what I've gathered, if Sauron uses his abilities in a widespread manner, such as corrupting the Numenorians, which, by the way, the downfall of Numenor is going to be brought so many times. It's funny. Okay, so in terms of like his actual abilities, if he uses it in a wide variety of like spans or manipulation, his actual overall competence as like a fighter, in terms of his potency, in stats, is actually drastically reduced. Which I would like to point out because say Ganondorf summons his giant ass army like he did in Tears of the Kingdom or whatever, and if Sauron has to address that, then he's going to get his power a little limited because he has to effectively divert attention, right? And that's mainly the issue. Usually, when he was like first defeated, by the wolf, sure, it's a was he? I'm
Huan.
mind blanking all this. Yeah, who am I bad? God, these names I had to like look at so many names. The point is, does Huan actually have like any direct combat feats, like statement wise? I mean, sure, he's fighting Valor, right? But like, as I mentioned before, most of the like fighting there was mainly due to manipulation and not like an actual combat thing. So effectively, the answer to the question is like, what feats does Huan have, right? In order to like grasp what what scale of feat that is, right?
Well, Huan also battled and defeated Morgoth's most powerful werewolf at a later point, despite being heavily weakened, which was noted to be one of Morgoth's most powerful creations, even rivaling that of the dragons and Balrogs. And Huan managed to defeat that despite being in a weakened and injured state, partially through raw skill and capability. So I'd say defeating one of Morgoth's most powerful and evil beings of all time would certainly qualify for something like that. If anything,
By the
Sauron
way,
got out of that battle better than the giant werewolf monster did, funnily enough.
actually, I think if I remember correctly, wasn't it like a because Lucy, upon like seeing Sauron trapped, calls upon her own magic and song, and she commands him to yield, effectively, she broke his will, Sauron's will, that is. And his power began to unravel. So he stripped his control over the land, the island. I think it was an island, so it caused the tower to, collapse. The point is, wasn't that mainly a, hacks thing, wasn't it? It wasn't like a
Not
physical matter, was it? Was it?
necessarily.
It's kind of made vague, honestly.
Generally, with that sort of thing in Middle Earth at that point, magic like that could generally be overcome or sort of countered by a similar, generally purifying force. At that point in time, Sauron's magic was already being heavily opposed by another Maiar named Melian, who had already been pushing him back for several years by that point. They were in a constant deadlock stalemate. And by that point, Sauron had just been fighting Felagund, fought Húin, and then got jumped by Luthien with her, I wouldn't say amped, but her magic was noted to be unnaturally potent for a being of her scale. So Sauron was basically jumped by like 4 absurdly magical beings back to back to back to back, at which point, yes, his magic was stalemated and he had to leave the island for the time.
But if I do remember correctly, that Sauron did actually have kind of reinforcements. He did send out wolf after Húin. Obviously, Húin slew them, right? But it is a matter of the fact that he wasn't alone during this. He wasn't just 1v1ing progressively, right? Especially during the context of which, after he's, angry and humiliated, he himself turns into huge wolf, and, fights him physically. And he loses, right? And it's noted that Húin is actually too quick and catches him by the throat. I think there's a passage, Sauron sprang upon Húin, and there befell the mightiest battle of wolf and hound that ever was. But no wizardry nor spell, neither fang nor venom, nor devil's art, could overthrow Húin of Valinor. And he took his foe by the throat and pinned him down. So not only in this fight is Sauron completely outmatched, which you noted that it was a close fight. It was not. And sure, maybe you can argue that Sauron was weakened by then, but that's not it's not as contextually supported as a huge downgrade, right? Especially given the fact that he's still able to summon reinforcements to kind of self-support. Now, I will say, while he is pinned, Luthien then joins the fight, right? And then she sings the Song of Power, right? And that's where the psychic battle kind of happens, right? So I will say it's not it's less the battle and more of a jumping, but I will say that original. Oh, what's up? You got a question?
This is all very, very interesting. What point are we trying to make? Because this lore is very fascinating, but I feel like is this still discussing who's more skilled?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I'm arguing that Húin actually doesn't have, Sauron doesn't actually have any tangible feats from Húin because Húin physically overpowered him easily, right? And so he doesn't actually get any skill off of that because he got jumped. He got instantly incinerated by the dude. And then he was cast away by Luthien. But still, the point is that he wouldn't. It's still not a great feat, especially for the fact that he gets diminished power and also he's not weak. Sorry, he is weak to having his power stripped away, and that's kind of an issue. Howdy.
Edward has returned to us.
So it's kind of sounding like there is some context to Sauron's skill feats, but it does sound like he's not just jobbing. It does sound like there's context on both Sauron's and the good guy side in that. So it's not like a super duper OP impressive skill feat, but it's also not nothing either.
I would say it's closer to a okay feat. Normally, because he does get power notified, he does get jumped, and he does instantly get slain per text. But the actual, I will confirm that the actual putting him down took a second party to actually magical overpower him. But still, he didn't really last that long against Húin.
Okay.
Anyhow, should we move on? Admittedly, it is almost
right.
an hour.
I'm kind of thinking, would y'all agree that
it's almost been an hour? That's crazy.
They're well, to be fair, we only started at page 20.
Yeah.
Yeah,
would we
true.
say that who's actually their like magic and their ability to like hacks each other out is gonna be more of a determining factor than like their overall stats?
Honestly,
Yeah, I'd say so.
In that case, I think it'd make more sense to go into like just stats first, just so we kind of get like a baseline feel for where these guys are at before we start going into like their win conditions and how their powers interact.
Yeah.
Right.
So we were kind of going Sauron Ganondorf for this. So MK, where would you say Sauron's stats generally are?
Well, it can generally vary depending on how far you want to scale Sauron, but as a general note, I'd probably stick with his best, I'd say, physical feats. Sauron has very clear-cut scaling across the board. I'm going to footnote. I don't buy him scaling to any of the Valar, so you aren't going to hear anything about Varda creating the stars or the universe or what have you today. It's mostly going to be more physical feats compared to Maiar or creations of Morgoth, which are both perfectly fine. The Maiar Ose, who I'd say is generally implied to be a weaker Maiar than Sauron, especially because Sauron was amplified by the One Ring. Ose never actually had any applications of his own, so this is a fair scaling chain. He is the one who raised Numenor from the sea, and that is it's generally a little unclear if that was a magical or physical feat, but it was probably more of a physical one simply due to how the Maiar work, and it was specifically noted to be a lifting feat, so that's probably what I'm
Physical.
going to go with.
Well, I'll say
Um,
well, that's kind of. I feel like you should kind of like what's the general like I say list of feats. I feel like that would probably more easily clarify it. See how consistent it is.
I'd say it's pretty consistent for the Maiar's capabilities. Ose's lifting gets about like, I guess, 19 teratons of TNT. That's where the calc went. Also worth noting was the fall of Ancalagan the Black, the mightiest of the dragons in Morgoth's creation. His fall was noted to cause massive upheavals and sink all of Beleriand, which was I guess you could say like an island or a landmass, that got to about 13.2 petatons. Notably, those are both physical feats, nothing to do with Sauron's magical capabilities. So I wouldn't say he's punching with that sort of power all the time, but in general, Morgoth's more powerful forces, of which Sauron would upscale, are generally capable of dealing with that sort of strength and capability. As for speed, in the Shadow War game, I unfortunately didn't bring any skins with me, but generally weaker characters in like Shadow War and Shadow of Mordor are capable of dodging and reacting to beams of light and just light in general. So you can probably estimate somewhere in the light speed range. Sauron would notably upscale pretty substantially off of this because these feats were being performed by rather basic humans and elves, of which Sauron, of course, is far superior to. If need ever arises, we can maybe get into like higher, weirder ends for magical power, but I think that's probably something I'm content to close on for now.
Actually,
We're kind of looking at 13 petatons and light speed for like just a general obvious ends for his power.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. Where's
I have-
Ganondorf sitting?
am I allowed to like combat any? Because I feel like there's a bit of
You can do whatever you want.
issues. Oh, okay. So, if I recall correctly, the first, the first topic he mentioned was Denier Ose. He raised Numenor from the sea. And, you argue physical. Not only are we not given a time span to the lifting, if it was physical, right? It's also noted that I think contextually it was magical, right? So it would actually be a magical 19 teratons feet if you go by that lifting feet of the teratons. So potentially, right? And I know you didn't mention. I know you said you're not going to go over the whole the Meyer thing, so I'm not going to touch that. As for the fall of Ancalagan the Black, he did cause like massive upheavals, but do you guys know how large the dragon is? He is absolutely massive, and because he died and he fell kinetic energy will get you to the 13 pentatons because he fell on the world, right? He's absolutely massive. Like, he's crazy size. Look at that. So, saying that Sauron can scale to a dragon that fell on the earth and caused an issue is is a little weird to me because if you scale this dragon, right, falling on the mountain is causing that issues, that doesn't translate to his physical attack because why would it? Because he's falling on the world, right? How does that translate to his attack? Because that's not a physical means of attack that he can scale to. Especially given the fact that,
Yeah,
like
I'm a little confused.
okay,
Isn't Sauron stronger than Caligan?
so Sauron is noted as one of the greatest, right? Contextually speaking, that is referring to either manipulation or like usefulness of his. The point is, even if you go by the direct power statement, why should you scale to somebody who fell on something due to physical strength? So, if he's only as big, right, and he only gets that calculation because he fell on the world, why would he physically scale in terms of actual AP?
Because he did it.
Right.
Maybe
Because he
I'm just
fell on the world.
confused, but maybe I'm not.
The point is,
I
to
think
summarize,
a better way to phrase it is that this feat seems to be more specific to him because of his massive size. When we don't really know like what the interactions are surrounding it, like does Sauron overpower him like in arm wrestling, or does he like punch him to death, or how is he actually, you know, how is the scaling actually work? Because just being said to be the greatest seems a little overly ambiguous when we don't really when it's applied in different ways.
MK,
I
how
will
would you
note.
say Sauron's power compares to Caligan's like physical stats?
I would say probably superior overall. Is my mic going through? I don't see an audio thing.
I can
just
hear you,
glitching.
but for
I
some
can
reason
hear
it's
you.
just not
Yeah,
doing
you're going
anything.
Yeah, I think the screen's just glitching then. All right, as I was saying then, I think I would personally argue Sauron is generally suggested to be superior to any of the dragons. It is the Lord of the
You're breaking
Rings
up.
appendices. Is it
I'm
I think we
working
can hear
now?
you well enough for the time being.
Yeah, okay. It was breaking
All
up for
right.
me a little bit.
It's noted in the appendices that Smaug the dragon, a dragon generally compared not directly one-to-one to Ancalagan, but also one of the more powerful dragons within Middle-earth's history, would have really just been a useful asset for Sauron's own forces, not comparable to Sauron himself in any regard. So there's already something heavily suggesting Sauron was massively superior to the dragons because, as a general footnote, the Maiar were superior to any of Morgoth's random beings. And also, Sauron does
Question.
possess the ability to change his size, shapeshift, and grow. So, if the question is about size, Einr spirits have displayed the ability to grow into similar sizes before. So, this isn't something Sauron would be incapable of replicating by any means whatsoever.
How
It is
big
not
has he
that.
grown?
Einar have previously grown to like mountain sizes before. I don't have the scans on me because I wasn't able to prepare for all of that, but it is something that has happened a few times. Say
will note.
lifting more, for instance, would have been another pretty prominent size feat because I doubt he was just lifting that with his tiny little arms.
Right. But I will note for this feat, I have an issue because, fundamentally speaking, it is mainly a kinetic calc based upon his death, right, of him falling, right? That doesn't translate to striking output if you're calculating somebody who fell and caused an explosion. That doesn't really quite follow with Sauron. I'm not saying he can't eventually scale, right? It is noted that in some texts that like Sauron is like the best servant of Melkor, right? But I'd like to argue, contextually speaking, Tolkien actually refers that as like mainly he was not only like terms of influence, not in terms of magical potency, because magical wise he is greater than Alcalon, especially in regards that his flames can't actually hurt the ring, right? I'll give you that credit. But I will say that his physical, it's not noted that he's physically stronger than Anklagon, nor is it like, does it make sense for him to like physically be stronger, especially given the size difference, even if you like grew it, right? Because contextually, it was a like control thing
Yeah.
that Sauron had going on.
He's gone green. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
He's greened out, and then he whited out.
And you know what that means?
Luigi took him over for a second.
Fish
Do we
Rat.
know who killed
Orgy.
Ancalagon?
And Callaghan was killed by Erendil the Mariner, a very powerful elf who utilized the enchanted ship known as Vingalot in the War
Okay.
of Wrath,
All right, so never mind.
which was
then.
really cool. Erendil is awesome, by the way. I'm just going to throw that out there.
True.
Is there any way to scale Sauron to him, or?
Oh, Sauron would be way stronger than Erendil himself directly, but Vingalot itself is a little bit trickier because it was enchanted by the Valar specifically, but we don't know how much they enchanted it. It's never really said how much of the power they poured in, though
Okay.
it was probably weaker than like Morgoth at a point where he was heavily weakened, so you could probably put it somewhere in the Mire level of power, roughly speaking, of course. Why is my internet still glitching
So
out?
Sauron
Also-
might scale to the Ancalagon feat, but there's some question marks around it. So it's
I would
maybe a
also
little
like to point out-
contentious.
I would also like to point out that in
Yeah, I'm
terms of
finding some
actually, like,
question marks, but I feel like we should probably hear.
oh, sorry, you're not really good. But also, you mentioned in Shadow of the Mordor that they scale to light speed, and I would like to fully debunk that. That is completely not true, because in Shadow of Mordor, sorry if my voice is completely weird, Sauron is actually fighting, right, and he is tagged several times by the arrows, right. He cannot dodge arrows even from afar. I'm not saying he's arrow level, but saying that he's light speed and light pacing is generally a misconception, especially during the fact that in several of the fields, right, some of his feats just don't line up with light speed whatsoever. Especially given the fact that most of the statements I found, like superior to Gandalf, who claims to move at the speed of wind and as fast as an arrow, with arrow pacing, flew from Galadriel at great speeds, travel speed. Moved
Not to get
FTD.
ahead of you, but isn't like a bunch of the best speed feats in Zelda also based on really cool arrows?
I'll get to that honestly, but
It's
point
kinda
is
true.
like it's honestly for the Celebrimbor stuff. Like, he can run 600 or like what 700 feet in 22 seconds, which comes out to like 26 miles per hour. Like, point is, it'd be a little bit disingenuous to say he like can dodge light and all that when you can look at the visual fight, he is kind of slugging around at a slower pace compared to his enemies. He strikes with pure power, but he does not like focus on speed and agility like Ganondorf will actually.
Yeah, light speed is
Furthermore,
like
most
enough to cross the planet multiple times in a fraction of a second. To
right, and I'm saying
visualize
that
it.
even if you go by the gameplay limitations of like basic versus, right, it does not like make too much sense why like he should be tagged by these arrows, and why should he be tagged by Celebrimbor, who does not display any of those feats very well. And not only that, he has more like consistently within like being generous, like maybe the hypersonic range being consistent. Lightspeed is more of a highest end kind of deal, and even then, there's a lot more like you can get Ganondorf faster than that without as much dubiousness is the issue. Even at the lowest ends, like I'm going low and high ends here.
Okay.
And I like to point out the greatest speed feat that I found for Sauron is he's compared to Anklingon the Black, right? Who, he kept up with Arendelle, the ship within the Vinga, the ship, and it's noted to sail the stars and back to Middle Earth within a day, right? And you'd be thinking, wow, that got to be 57 billion times the speed of light, which is calculated at. But there's like 10 issues with that if you are scaling that. Actually, MK, are you going to use that? Because if you are, I don't want to like address arguments we're not going to use, but are you going to use that?
Is my audio still working? My computer is glitching out really badly.
It's a
It's a
little
little glitchy,
choppy,
but-
but we can hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're speaking right now, in which case we can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering.
Well, I wasn't. You sounded like hailed by a radio. I'm not sure what is going on with my computer, but I'm going to try to get this sorted out while I keep going. As I was going to say, though, no, I wasn't planning to utilize Vinglot. I was only going to save that for if you start trying to argue sun arrows or creation speed feats.
But sun arrows are so funny,
Otherwise,
though.
no, that was my bucket. No,
The
you don't get to
context
use
about the
those.
sun arrow. It's so funny.
And
It
don't
is so
make me
funny.
bring
It
up
is
how
just
Ganon
good
does
draw
dodging
straight.
arrows while we're at it.
Yeah, I don't know
Say
how I
again,
feel
MK?
about this whole arrow downplay argument, if I'm being honest, but
I'm
I'm not
real.
saying
It's
Don't
like
make me bring up how good Ganon is at dodging arrows while we're at it, because he gets tagged by those
Actually,
bad boys all the time.
he
Like,
actually
In fact, last I
blocks them
checked, this is
point
the whole
blank.
point of Wind Waker, that he gets blasted by them the entire fight.
I would like to point out that he
But
gets hit
enough
from
of
behind
that.
the head. Also, I'm not saying he's like arrow level. That's a bit funny. Arrow level is genuinely funny. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying Lightspeed is a bit disingenuous. Honestly, I'm not putting Ganondorf as like
Better not be arguing
as high.
Lightspeed either then, because I can play the arrow anti-feats game too.
Actually,
I don't think he's gonna
speaking of,
argue
you can
Lightspeed for Zelda.
right, and mostly, I mean, even if you went that part, you can get the whole blocking like the light arrows point blank, right? And that's that. But point is, I'm just saying. I'm just pointing out that generally during Shadows of Mordor, there's not really comparable like light speed feats, and that's mainly the issue. So we don't actually have that many like speed feats for Sauron if you think about it. Like,
wait a second.
most of it is
Is your argument against the lightspeed feats in Shadow of Mordor is that there's not other lightspeed
Yeah,
feats
there's not-
besides the lightspeed feats to support the lightspeed feats?
okay. I'm saying that in Shadows of Mordor, there's not really much support for like the light speed feats.
They don't seem to operate that way very consistently. Like they seem to operate in very tangible, normal, regular time. Like they're still superhuman. Like they're still clearly faster than like the fastest human. It's not like to the point where time is almost impossible to measure.
Alright. I'm convinced arrow speed, Sauron. What's Ganondorf got for speed?
Arrow.
I will like to
Arrow
point
plus
out Arrow, but also I like to point out that hello, breathe. Ganondorf does actually dodge a Flurry Rush spear hit from Link from behind, which, if you actually look at the footage, which I could provide, it's just gonna be kind of annoying. Point is, he does dodge Link during a Flurry Rush, right? Which is incredibly fast, especially point blank with the whole speed feat with the There's a lot of counts
like
Flurry Rush.
I want to say like low end is like 400 miles an hour. Like it's fast.
Let's go arrow level. The point is, like, Flurry Rush
level
and him
plus.
arrow level plus, but him dodging Flurry Rush from point blank just surpasses Shadow of Mordor and what feats in combat they have, generally speaking. Unless MK has some, other speed feat, in terms of combat, then otherwise, Tears of the Kingdom
Well, I think you
alone.
should probably go through more specific like feats for Ganon because we haven't really gotten
Oh, yeah.
much like tangible.
Yeah, they're
for
going to
either.
get on that.
So what are these FTL plus feats for Ganon you speak of?
Using them as a, I suppose, counter to the light speed, I suppose. Here, let me pull it up, actually. One of those calcs. While I'm doing that,
Say equal levity.
say again?
Just say equal levity when you're referring to it being like used for a high end.
If we start correcting each other on like proper terminology, we're gonna be here all day.
We're going to be here all day.
We're already going to be here all day.
We've
I
already
don't
been.
have anything later.
Nah, you're just gonna live here now.
Yeah,
We're stuck here.
God, I have homework.
get
Too
used to the
bad.
process.
This was all an elaborate trap to keep you contained here forever.
They knew. They were afraid of what would happen if I actually went back into the wild.
I mean, getting the specific feats in scaling would be cool, but like, is anyone seriously gonna contend Zelda being some degree faster than light at this point?
Yeah,
Oh, all right then.
Okay, advert. But
Advert is unconvinced.
that's my job. That's my job here. That's like the
I
sole reason
sent
I'm
you a link.
here.
Also,
Purely
does
here for
Sauron have
skepticism.
actually like? Does Sauron have more combat feats? Because like most of the Shadow Border stuff is not as useful as it presents itself.
He was breaking on. What did Gerber say?
He was asking if Sauron actually
Oh.
scales in speed to anyone from Shadow of War.
He's the final
Also-
boss of that game. Of course he'd scale.
I'm not talking about scaling. I'm
He
talking about if he has more
everybody.
speed feats.
Oh, does Sauron have
He's
any
asking if he
speed
has
feats in
other
Shadow
speed
of War?
Well, if you do want to argue that way, he technically could dodge the some of those arrows that were previously mentioned. He can technically dodge some of them in the middle of a time slow, which probably would get some weird degree of higher.
Except he can't.
Outside of the light stuff. I heard that, Turbo.
I'm sorry about that.
In general, you could
I need-
probably,
I-
I'd argue you could probably just get them both into similar ranges of speed on general similar ends.
If I remember correctly, during the time slows, he was getting clipped by pretty much all the arrows.
We have successfully, and listen up, folks.
Yeah.
We have successfully
That's like
downgraded
the-
everybody to arrow level.
That's the main way you beat him in the game, like just clipping him repeatedly with arrows. He might like do
Okay.
it once or twice, but like generally a 2% success rate isn't very good.
So comparable to Ganon's rate of dodging them in Link to the Past.
I will note that I guess point blank in Ocarina of Time, he can swat away any arrow types, which is useful because he can only be hit. Well, look, contextually, he is only really hit by arrows if he is stunned by an outside source.
So
So,
highly
for
in
instance-
Kerbo's counter to vaguely light speed Sauron is to bring up relativistic Zelda feats.
Yep. And mostly that's due to Tears of the Kingdom stuff with the whole fucking beams of light. And take of that of what you will with the whole speed feats. Obviously it's video, but like
Hello, Twilty.
Hmm.
There's a name I
Honestly-
wasn't expecting
Oh,
to see
hello,
today.
Quilty.
right?
Oh god.
Honestly speaking, it's great. We get Flurry Rush here. But point is, it's mostly just to point out that even if you use the light speed stuff, there's extra light speed stuff for Zelda. So I suppose with MK you can just equalize it, I suppose. But
Advert, are you
Match the
satisfied?
draw. From what I've gathered, like no matter how, I'd say because there's so many versions that kind of vary a little bit in speed for Ganon, especially with like Flurry Rush, it seems to be as fast, if not a little faster than Sauron,
All right.
if that makes any sense.
I will look
I'd
out
also
for...
like
It's not a big difference, just it is there.
I'd also like to point out that I did not address any strength feats or Ganondorf. MK, what did you put the Sauron at anyway?
13
in terms of-
petatons or
I don't
continental.
remember the ranges anymore.
13 petatons would be in like the continental levels of attack potency.
MK's
Oh,
brain is
God.
gone.
Did we validate if like Sauron can actually like scale to like the fall of
Yes.
Ganondorf? Because
We talked about it for like
Sure we
10
did,
minutes.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Did we agree that it's like weird?
Even using that is weird, but using that, Ganondorf just has superior feats in terms of any of the Blood Moons, which at its peak with Demon King form comes out to like 4 Ronatons or something. Let me actually check. It was Dwarf Star level with his like highest iteration of it. I can probably send the feats. Give it a second.
Dwarf star level is higher than continental.
That it
I
is.
really hope so.
It's very true.
But even at the passive lower ends with Breath of the Wild, it comes out to like, funnily enough, moon level, which I say funny because most most moving the moon feats end up higher than moon level. The point is like the lowest end is moon level for moving the moon in Breath of the Wild, and that's just passively
Wow,
doing that. It
wild.
happens like once a week. It's passively doing that. When he physically does it, right, with his might during like Demon King, it comes out a lot faster. So it comes out to like large planet at the like lower ends, and at the highest it goes is like Door Star level in terms of like power. So in terms of it, Ganondorf just has superior might there.
MK, do you have any response to
Oh no.
Ganondorf having a clear physicality edge?
I mean, are we arguing that the Blood Moon feat is physical?
So it would
I
seem
was
no.
I would say it is, given the fact that Magic in Zelda is kind
Oh
of
no.
special. Hey, you asked for it. But Magic in Zelda is special because you have to do your physical capabilities, or you have to have the power, right? It's not like a hacks thing. Especially if Ganondorf is using that same gloom to like physically overpower somebody. And if he's using the gloom to tear the moon out of orbit, and he's using the same gloom, if not a little more potent, to like push against somebody, or use it to physically bolster his attacks, especially with the Secret Stone, it should go physically. Especially in context with Echoes of Wisdom mentioning that. Actually, let me find the direct quote. I don't want to like misquote it.
Well, I think there's also earlier on in the game where, or like in the first cutscene even, is that Ganon more directly like blasts up a castle, which yeah, in and of itself not very physical, but I think Link blocks those blasts, so it does provide more easy to do scaling.
Link
I would
was
also like
pulled
to
out by
mention
Rauru by that point. He wasn't there.
he was actually there actually for the initial blast. Link was only saved by Raur after the fact of everything else, right? He was hanging by the ledge, and no, Raur teleported him after the fact. I would also like to point out
After
that
he had gotten crippled, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it does
right,
still
he was
show like a
crippled too.
pretty decent limit there. Like he did get
I would
clipped,
also like to
but
point out that Ganondorf did cause all the chasms in Tears of the Kingdom, right? And he
those were big.
honestly, those chasms are absolutely massive. And hell, even if you just use the very one chasm from Hyrule Castle, that chasm
Like
itself
a few
is
kilometers,
absolutely
wasn't
massive. It was. Point is, he blasts himself from like right because context wise, in the start of Tears of the Kingdom, he's at the bottom of the world, right? He's pushing
it?
all that matter, all that not even just the castle, but all that matter to displace all that, which grants him higher than anything Star has physically. Even if you do not use the whole moon thing, which I argue you should, because he's blasting you with the exact same, gloom that he,
Yeah.
multiplies, right? So I don't see why he wouldn't physically scale. So he does have a large physical edge over Sauron.
We have been going for about an hour, so I feel like we could probably move on from stats unless there's something y'all desperately want to talk about in that regard.
I think we
Yeah,
move
I'm
on.
good.
Alright.
What is his durability for Sauron? Honestly, 'cause that's mainly the big issue. Because like
Are we not
the
assuming that
okay,
AP and durability are going to be relative for both of these guys? Like they are like
I mean,
brawlers,
they're
no,
like
aren't
they
they?
have
They should be.
sometimes
immortality, so
you can have like a higher durability feat than your AP. You sometimes. I'm not saying that they
Does
should be
Sauron
split.
have absurdly higher durability than his AP or Ganondorf for that
Probably
matter?
not. I can't think of any instances.
Okay, I'm just double checking. All right, let's go.
So these guys are in a brawl. Ganondorf probably has the physical edge, but they're kind of brawling and they're trying to kill each other. What's stopping Ganondorf from just like crushing Sauron into paste?
that's a good one.
Physically, I'd argue nothing. But if MK has something up to it,
I assume MK is not just going to concede. I assume Sauron has stuff to deal
right?
with the fact of being
But of
crushed into
course
paste.
I do. Well, I guess we might as well
Guess
get
we're
into
all in
some
agreement.
abilities then. Let's start with Ganon's weapons. Sherm, do you have the scan I sent? Oh yes, I'll ask you to pull up the scan momentarily. So let's talk about Ganondorf's weapons that have been hyped up a lot today with Ganon's skill on them. They don't matter at all. In fact, none of Ganon's weapon skill is going to matter in this debate because Sauron has a very useful and passive, so it doesn't matter whether he activates it or not, ability that stems from the Nazgul. When a weapon makes contact with something like the Witch King of Angmar, and given they all get their abilities from Sauron, the same should apply to him, that weapon is immediately and completely destroyed. This even applies to enchanted and magical weaponry, such as the Barrow Blade, which was shattered and destroyed just by stabbing a dying, heavily weakened Witch King of Angmar, let alone Sauron at his peak.
This is Barrowblade.
Yes, this is Barrow Blade. The weapon, which
you
is
punch the
noted to
shit
be
out of him?
enchanted, was destroyed immediately after it was used to stab the Witch King of Angmar, who is far lesser than Sauron in magical potency and ability. Given this was also an enchanted weapon, this means any of Ganon's weaponry that makes contact with Sauron is destroyed instantaneously. This applies to all of his trump cards, including tools like gloom weapons, the Sword of Sages, any of his weaponry, and the Wind Waker, probably the Trident of Darkness, what have you, and completely neutralizes Ganon's argued advantage in weaponry skill. At this point, Ganon is forced to rely either on direct hand-to-hand, which is not something he has ever displayed much use in, or magical capability, which also, he does, but seeing as the main focus was on a brawl, this is not really the time for that. So I would personally argue that Sauron has a very good way to get around any argued physical or weapon skill advantage here, because all of Ganon's weapons are just going down the drain on use. And this does apply to Ganon's trump cards like Gloom Weaponry and the Sword of Sages. They are both
I would like-
here.
How
I would like-
did that
I
one
would-
guy cut off Sauron's fingers in order to get the ring then? What the hell?
That was movie exclusive, and Narsil was also destroyed in the process.
What
So
if he bites off his finger?
I have
Oh,
I have
We
a
also
main-
did that in the book.
yeah, no, that's
Yes.
not how it happened in the book. So no, it wouldn't be.
Well, not like in
applicable
the
to
same way,
movie.
but like it's
Yes.
We don't
so
know
it's
how he got beaten in the book. It only says they overdrew him and were killed in the process, so it can't really
Yeah,
be
he was
utilized.
physically. I would like to point out that the main core of this argument is that, oh, well, he has this hide that can destroy weapons. There's 4 major issues with this, and completely you can't debunk this. Gloom weapons can be reformed anytime by Ganondorf. He literally does this over the course of this fight. He can spawn as many gloom weapons as he can because gloom is just Ganondorf's blood, in which he has an endless supply of gloom, right? So what does it matter if even if you assumed that it would work on gloom weapons, which I argue it wouldn't even work. Do you know why? Because gloom itself is extremely corrosive. Right? It is naturally corrosive to the point where it can instantaneously destroy any holy relic, right? Even the powered up Master Sword, which regained its true splendor, it was bathed in light for 100 years in Breath of the Wild. Even the might of that was completely and utterly shattered. So not only would Sauron's weapons be completely useless, but matter of the fact, Ganondorf can just reform his weapons with gloom, and he does this many times. He can do it with the bow. He can do it with his club, his sword. He can do as many as he wants. So it doesn't. So even if you can argue that he would lose his weapons, which doesn't make sense with how gloom and malice works with corrosiveness, it wouldn't make sense that he couldn't just reform a second weapon, right? Especially given the fact he has so much more weapons that are just gloom, right? So it doesn't matter if he can just break a single weapon; he can just reform another one. And hell, even if you use the Trident of Darkness, even if you use the Sword of Sages, which, by the way, is a huge one condition, even those aspects, right? Trident of Darkness has been formed before, and has been dematerialized in A Link to the Past as well. He can go invisible. He can make it. He can effectively have full control over it. And even if you can't say he doesn't, Gloom weapons just ignore this point entirely. So he has a huge win condition in Gloom weapons.
So
what about the
Gloom
time
is
it
his
takes for
blood.
him to reform Gloom weapons? You still have to account for the time he'd be losing in that process. That sounds like free hits to me. Also, how does going invisible equal dematerializing and reforming? That's just invisibility.
Secondary
That's not the
secondary
same.
question: if his power is his blood, does that mean his power is HIV?
This is
You
the big
never know.
question.
These are
He's just gonna
truly
get Sauron AIDS.
Ganondorf versus Sauron questions we need to be asking.
So we keep bringing
Does
up
Sauron
We
have
will laugh,
AIDS
but
resistance?
these are important questions. Now, answer it.
So we keep bringing up like that Ganondorf has special magic weapons that would be win cons, but we haven't even actually established why Sauron just
Oh, yeah.
getting hit with a
That can
normal
probably go
weapon
next.
isn't a win con. Like, what makes Sauron hard to kill?
I mean, why would a holy
Sauron-
weapon work on Sauron? He himself is kind of an angelic being. I don't see what the Sword
Actually,
of Sages is going to do.
Sauron.
And I didn't hear any explanation for why the Sword of Sages wouldn't be destroyed. You mentioned the Trident of the Darkness and you mentioned the Gloom, but you did not mention the Sword of Sages.
That's a valid point. I did not mention the Sword of Sages. Honestly, the best thing I can say against the Sword of Sages is that. Honestly, you got me there. Honestly, it might actually just be genuinely destroyed unless you consider the fact that it does repel, like, it was made to specifically kill Ganon and bypass his malice, right? And Tears Ganon, Twilight Princess. So why should the Nazgul's like little power that, why should that bypass sort of six sages if it was made by the sages, right? By the way, the sages resist Ganondorf's corrosive powers a lot of the times. Why would it like? Can you argue that the Nazgul has a higher potency in the future to like destroy the Sword of Six
Well,
Sages?
the Barrow Blade was able to overcome the Nazgul's magic, and it still got destroyed. That's basically 1-to-1. I'd say the Sword of Sages is kind of cooked. It's
I don't know about
a
that, 'cause, like,
1-to-1 example.
I wouldn't say it's a 1-to-1 example. Ganondorf just has higher like passives than like a Nazgul, especially because it's made to kill,
We're doing hack tiers.
Ganondorf. The point
This
is,
this is
even-
the hacks here is the matchup. I feel this is kind of like the meat and potatoes.
Right.
Okay, so your
Oh,
argument
God.
again. So let me get this straight for a minute. Your argument for the Sword of Sages surviving is that it is just more holy, basically.
Holier
not
than
only
thou.
that, but like, what sword? Again, I forgot what it was called.
It was a barrow blade. It was one of the magic enchanted swords that was able to overcome the Nazgul's magic. Kind of like the Sword of Sages is able to do almost did to Ganon because it
That was
failed,
made
as we all know. Which I think is worth pointing out is the Sword of Sages kind of failed to kill Ganon, and the barrow blade was a lot more successful in that regard. They are
I would
very
like to point
similar
out
in
the
their
only
workings.
The only reason that the Sword of Six Sages failed in killing Ganondorf was because the cosmic prank of the divine goddesses giving Ganondorf the Triforce of Power to effectively resuscitate himself. That is,
I mean,
verbatim,
if anything, wouldn't that just suggest the Sword of Sages has inferior potency compared to what Ganon usually has with the Triforce, and therefore is inapplicable for that theory?
not really, because that also factors in the fact that even after he got the Triforce, he could not regenerate that specific wound in Twilight Princess, despite the fact he can reform his soul and all that. So yeah, I would say because it's so potent, he couldn't like reform that damage he took. The Sword of Six Sages would actually just not be afflicted. But hell, even if we ignore it, let's ignore that for now. Most of almost of the time that Sauron was attacked by a holy weapon, he kind of got one shot, especially with Gilligad, Gilligad used the sword, right? The spear of Gilligad, rather. I think it was Aglicos? I really forgot the name. Point is, that didn't really like break instantly against Sauron. Like that battle was kind of off screen, or I guess off text, but point is, like, that didn't break against Sauron.
Well,
Hell.
the Sword of Narsil actually did break, so I'm not sure what you're arguing.
No, I'm talking about the spear of Gilligad.
I mean, we never actually got as much elaboration on how the spear was utilized to defeat Sauron. Narsil was always the main focus, and Narsil was very much destroyed. So I feel like that should probably be the main subject of focus. And this still doesn't really address how the Sword of Sages is able to resist being destroyed.
I think it kind of okay. So your argument that the Sword of Six Sages can get destroyed is that like the Narsil thing? Is it like a corrosive action or like what is it?
Sherm, could you pull back up the scan, please? If that's not a problem, of course.
Yeah, sure thing, sure thing. It does kind of sound like we're starting to argue in circles, though.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
right. I think it's mostly just this point.
So yeah, it basically just burns up into nothingness. It's said to be smoking, so I wouldn't say that's general corrosion. That's definitely a lot more going on there than just your typical corrosion hacks.
It almost sounds like it was like it was disintegrated to the point of evaporation.
Yeah.
Almost sounds like he was used to start a forest fire.
There weren't any trees around, thankfully.
Magic metal into smoke.
Smokey Bear is gonna be pissed.
No.
Yeah, Smokey Bear.
Smoky Bear.
My holy forest fire. Ah.
The true end to this
Only
fight.
the Lord can stop this fire.
The true end of this fight is once when all the dust is settled, the castles have been destroyed, everything's burning, and the winner is standing beaten, bruised, but still alive. And then Smokey Bear comes out of the fucking woods and then crushes the winner's skull before telling you only you can prevent forest fires before going back to his cave. That's the real
Only the Lord can prevent forest fires.
only you
Anyhow.
can prevent the
Damn,
dark
Smokey
seeds of
voice,
people
actually.
from taking over your world.
So I guess the point is that the Sword of Sages has good feats for supposedly being able to kill unkillable things, but Sauron's ability might be able to destroy it after one good hit. So that's kind of like the sword may not be good for the long term. I am kind of curious if you could touch on Sauron's like immortality. Like, why is he so hard to kill in the first place?
Yeah, we kind of haven't gotten much on that.
All right. Well, there are a few things to cover up on an Einr spirit's immortality. First off, there's the whole fact of them being immortal. They don't really age. So if this fight ever did drag on for years on years, Ganon would be in a lot of trouble because, yeah, he's in
Both of
trouble
them are
there.
immortal.
They just get bored eventually.
We ever seen an? You know, I'm not actually going to challenge this right now. I don't want to drag on forever. The main thing that makes an Einr so difficult to destroy is they're essentially indestructible, as confirmed by J.R.R. Tolkien in his letters, which I think I sent to Sherm. Yes, I did. I sent it to Sherm under indestructible.
Who's he sending these letters to?
These were
His
actually
wife?
just letters Tolkien sent to curious readers who wanted to send stuff into him to ask questions. He was actually very nice. He sent out hundreds of letters to answer questions for curious readers. He was a really nice guy like that. Anyway, Tolkien is explaining how Sauron was able to survive the destruction of Numenor, because obviously getting hit by a Iluvatar is something nobody should logistically be able to survive. But he is...
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Basically, Tolkien first off does confirm that spirits are indestructible. He very clearly says the indestructibility of spirits with free wills, even by the creator of them. So that's confirming Iluvatar was not able to, destroy the spirit. It's an inevitable feature. I feel like that's pretty clear cut.
Hey, yo, we're all.
So yeah, Tolkien directly states, and given this is a direct statement from Tolkien, I think it's usable. It's basically stating that yes, even evil powers and spirits in Middle-earth, including Sauron, cannot be destroyed by any force, even Iluvatar. Which of course makes it a problem if even Iluvatar cannot destroy a spirit. It's not just an AP thing, it's almost sort of like an existing law in their world that those spirits cannot be destroyed by conventional means, which also brings up the fact of the matter that attacking conventional spirits in The Legend of Zelda, to be blunt, is rather inconsistent. You can make arguments for it, but Link's cape is able to escape Ganon's attacks all the time, despite the phasing properties. And also in the Wind Waker, you cannot attack Poes when they're using their intangible features. Poes are usually the main argument used to attack intangible spirits for the Legend of Zelda series, but I looked into it, and Actually, no. Their intangibility powers are only in the Wind Waker, and that is, curiously, the only game where you have to stun them with light first. So it's debatable if Ganon can even attack Sauron's soul normally.
So
Even
is
if he could, Sauron's soul is indestructible. There's no way Ganon is surpassing something Iluvatar cannot. I think that would be
This misses a major point, however, because while the spirits themselves are indestructible, that does not imply invulnerable, and that's mainly the core of your argument. You assume that because Iluvatar himself can destroy the spirits, which contextually was a free will thing, he chooses not to, I suppose. But ignore that. Having invulnerable souls does not necessitate, or sorry, does not like mean and translate to like your souls can't be diminished. Because actually, fun fact, quote, then Sauron was for that time vanquished, and he forsook his body, and his spirit fled far away in the places. That is the like text of downfall of Numenor, right? It doesn't note his spirit is damaged. However, one text that does, notably the souls of the Ain are capable of even spiritual recovery and healing from crippled state. Quote, so long as they haven't been severed or like weakened beyond recovery. And that's mainly the main point here. You don't need to destroy Sauron's soul because, frankly, it's patterned. Even if you destroy his ring, right, he is dissipated to such a level he cannot regenerate or like exist cohesively to interact. But he still exists, right? And that's mainly the issue. It's more so a dissipation thing. It was never a destruction thing. And fact of the matter is, you can affect souls, right? Hell, even you can like diminish them to the point where they are, incapable. Hell, even Melkor himself, right, had his powers diminished and had his soul diminished, and he was cast into the void. Sure, that was done by arrow and all that, like all the iron and all that bullshit. But
It wasn't by
is,
arrow.
soul, wasn't it by? I thought he was taking counsel by arrow, and he was then by the Einor. No, what was he doing then?
No, Melkor was defeated because by that point he had used up so much of his power, corrupting everything. You don't just beat the energy out of an Einor spirit; they have to actively utilize their power. It's like they're running on a battery of their own charge. You can't just punch their magic out of them. That's how Gandalf was able to be killed by the Balrog. The Balrog sure did, and that sure didn't work on Gandalf.
Well, they didn't try hard enough.
Clearly.
Exactly.
The point is,
As
like the
for
souls themselves.
Melkor, he wasn't defeated by Iluvatar. He was captured by the Valar at the end of the War.
No, I'm saying like he was like, wasn't he held like judged by Iluvatar? He wasn't.
No, he was judged by Manwë. Oh, completely different character.
Oh, I thought Manwë himself was like, oh, I can't judge you.
No, Manwë is not Iluvatar. No.
Yeah,
We're
Manwë was
putting
like,
Turbo on the fraud watch. You get him out of here.
Hey, Manwë himself said, hey, I can't judge you. Whatever.
Well, it wasn't Iluvatar who judged him.
So the idea is that it's theoretically possible to diminish. There's ways to make a soul less powerful in Lord of the Rings, which would make it more susceptible to certain hacks. What ways does Ganondorf have to diminish, quote unquote, Sauron's essence or soul or spirit or whichever one it was?
So NK pointed out that you can't affect souls, but like that's not really quite true, because in Twilight Princess you can literally tear out the souls of Pose and you can destroy them right with the Master Sword. So I'm not really quite sure where he's getting that, especially when you can tear them out.
Ganon? That's the Master Sword, not Ganon himself.
Hey, let me get there. I'm just saying. So actually, no, let me get to it. The point is like saying that they don't really have like interactions, right? Especially because you mentioned the intangibility point. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. I was addressing that point. So you asked how he can affect the soul, right? To that, I say Malice and Gloom. That's mainly one of the big ones, especially since both of them are passive. Just Gloom is just a more potent Malice. Okay, notably speaking, Gloom. Actually, I made a huge document with Ganondorf here about Gloom. It's quite cool. You should check it out. Anyway, Gloom itself is noted to afflict the spirit and mind, and it decays them both to such a level that it like affects your mind, right? So Gloom is like a how do I put this? Because like there's a lot of Japanese texts you have to go through that can like say like let me pull up this camera. But I know the basic one is that he affected Nidra, right, who is a divine spirit sent by the goddesses to kind of watch over things. So the Gloom, sorry, hell, even Malice, the weaker version of Gloom, is able to affect Nidra, a divine spirit, similar in nature, arguably, and he can use Gloom to do the exact same thing. Which, to the point, Minoru had her damage that she had to displace it to survive, right? Her body and soul were damaged, so she had to she even has the soul stone, so she had to displace herself. So to say it can't affect and inflict souls is kind of not true. And again, in hell, even Link had to gradually purge the gloom that inflicted his soul and shit. So much to the point he had to go through 151 shrines of light that were made specifically to cast out gloom, and he still had some in him. So gloom is so potent that it affects divine spirits, affects Link so much that he had to go through 151 shrines, which, by the way, all quite annoying. Don't do that again. And point is, and it doesn't, and hell, even the Master Sword itself, which has a spirit of, Fee in it, it was so potent that it literally followed her back in time. It literally afflicted her despite the fact Gloom didn't exist back then at that capacity. So, the point is you don't need to destroy Sauron's soul to beat him. In fact, most of contextually speaking, Tolkien was yeah, Sauron was defeated when he was cast in the ring. He was made powerless by the ring. So it's not even in theory that his soul can be disrupted and destroyed, unless you're insinuating that lava is better than Eru, which nobody's saying that. But his soul can be damaged, and his soul can be irreparably harmed, and that's what gloom is. It is a miasma of irreparable harm, which, given it is passive, given it can have a huge effect on relics, the ring would passively be weakened and passively actually I would argue it actually get destroyed by gloom. And you don't even need to destroy the whole soul thing, so that is completely irrelevant. Even if their soul is invulnerable, which I'm not detesting or arguing against. I'm just saying that Ganondorf can just passively just hit him with a gloom sword. He gets afflicted by gloom. And hell, by the way, even if you get afflicted by gloom, even if you were passively fighting him, like the sages were, your items and your body will be afflicted by gloom. Genuinely, there's nothing stopping gloom from just afflicting Sauron. And in an overtime fight, that will actually just put him out of his commission, because not only does it dissipate strength, it literally sapped all of Link's strength. Not only does it sap your vitality, it sapped all of Link's vitality, your stamina. Generally speaking, what can Sauron do against Gloom? Just sapping his strength, sapping his body, destroying, damaging his soul. It doesn't need to be destroyed to the point where he's just too weak to reconfigure. And you brought up many times that Sauron and Melkor, if they're using their power, it's kind of like a power charge. If they're using their power, right, they have to divert power into regeneration to regenerate. If they don't do that, they're going to stay a little spirit that is powerless. So, point of the matter is, he gets to deal with Ganondorf's just summoning tons of minions. I said that like Brew, by the way. That's funny. He gets to deal with that. He gets to deal passively with Gloom, which damages his soul. That's just the major win con. He just passively does that.
So your argument is that Ganondorf would get a bunch of gloom on Sauron and Sauron's ring, which would destroy the ring and diminish Sauron's body and the majority of his spirit to nothing. And you're saying even if the soul is still technically alive, it would be reduced to such a point that it would basically be a win anyway at that point.
Yes, and that's honestly how Sauron is defeated in lore. So when you cast the ring into the fires of Mordor, which by the way I still can't find the comic, he himself is not erased from existence. He still exists in some capacity. Hell, even Melkor, who by the way effectively used the entire world as a ring, right? When he was cast out, none of them are destroyed. Melkor still has influence on the world, even if it's a tiny bit, and that's what evil is. Evil is just Melkor's influence upon it, right? So it doesn't matter if Sauron can just not die, right? If you're going by a context based of can Ganondorf fully kill Sauron? No, he can't really do that. Can Ganondorf dissipate him to a point that it considers a win because he literally cannot regenerate? Yeah, he can definitely do that. Easily so. Especially given his opening move, which by the way I checked, is to throw as much gloom at you as possible, which he done with Link. He met him again in the castle. He did with the sages. Like, that's his opening move. It's just to throw the most potent gloom, which would honestly just end the match right there if you argued it there.
Let's go HIV
So
positive.
So what would Sauron do to being glomped by a bunch of gloom?
Ew.
Fortunately, I saw this argument coming, as Advert probably was smirking in the back because he knew I was expecting this.
I'm
Let me
not
pull up.
that nefarious.
Yes, you are. Let me pull up my notes.
Okay, I knew
He's
it.
All
It wasn't
right.
smirking.
now.
I had a feeling gloom was going to be coming up, so I took the time to prepare some notes on it, and not just yet, Sherm, but I do have some more images that you're going to be pulling up here soon. So let's actually discuss what gloom does and how it worked, because obviously far be it from me to deny the Master Sword destruction feat. But let's take this one thing at a time and go over, starting with the hacks of gloom. I took the time to compile the gloom hacks list thanks to our, well, at least my friends over on the Link versus Tarnish blog who went over all of that good stuff. So let's go over all of that. Let me pull up my notes. Going through the things Gloom can do. First off, Gloom can inflict somebody with diseases. That's just not going to be a problem because, sure, it can do whatever it wants to Sauron's body, but it's not doing anything to his spirit. And Gloom diseases also aren't anything like super dangerous. Regular people in Tears of the Kingdom were able to survive them even if they were compromised. That's not going to do much to Sauron. Reaping his soul with the Gloom Spears, that's also obviously not going to do anything because reaping Sauron's soul is just going to result in him continuing as a soul. That's not doing very much. Sleep manipulation obviously isn't doing anything because spirits don't sleep. That, of course, leads to the one that Kerbo was leading with, life force draining. Hypothetically speaking, this could be a problem, but there is a catch. We need to compare the life force of Link and Sauron, because as Kerbo correctly pointed out, it was able to drain most of Link's life force. Not all of it, I would point out. Since we're going with a
I would like to point
Sauron, yes?
Okay. Is the mic being funny? Because it's giving me some weird messages. Is this working?
Yes, it's working.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I would like to point out, really super real quick, I'm not interrupting your argument, that Link would have died if Sauron.
He would have, but the initial attack still didn't drain all his life force. He was just dying from having his arm corroded. That's not really the same thing as the life force draining argument. Anyhow, Link's life force and Sauron's are just not comparable in the slightest, because you must remember that Sauron is an Ainur. At the very least, we are looking at a life that spans over 50,000 years compared to Link's however old he is. I mean, maybe like
10,000.
young adult. That's not even a fraction of a dot in the vast expanse of Sauron's incredible life force. You can't argue Ganon is just going to be standing there T-posing, draining Sauron's life force for hours at absolute best case scenario it would take to drain all of that. And Sauron's just going to stand there and let him do that, especially when, as we previously covered, things like teleportation and shadow magic are some of Sauron's bread and butter. So life force draining simply is not reliable because Sauron has way too much of it. And as Kerbo himself also brought up, that power stuff is tied to their life force, so you can't really argue against it being that longevity. So Ganon has to drain for who knows how long. I mean, it took a decent amount of time to drain Link. It didn't even kill him. Sauron has way too much life force to go through and has ways to escape. So that leaves one last thing, which is, of course, probably the crux of arguing for Ganon to win, is the destruction of the One Ring. Let's actually talk about that. I'd like to point out that it has been argued several times throughout this debate that the Master Sword was destroyed, quote, instantly. I get where this is coming from, but if you go back and watch the initial clip, which I unfortunately cannot share because we can't share video footage for this without really overlooking the cast, the destruction of the Master Sword actually took a period of over 13 to 14 seconds, unimpeded, no interruptions. Link didn't even try to do much of anything to escape it, whereas Sauron can
Actually,
teleport his...
The sword itself actually shattered upon contact with Gloom.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it
It
did.
was
It shattered
completely
upon contact. Right, it was engulfed, but the actual slash itself shattered the blade.
It was shattered after it had been fully engulfed and weakened for like 15 seconds total. That is not the same as just touching.
Oh, okay. If you're going by that, then yeah. Okay.
I would also
Continue.
point out that Ganon knew ahead of time that he had to target the Master Sword, which is a major plot point in the game because Rauru ran his stupid mouth.
Actually, we
Ganon
don't
even
know that,
refers...
actually.
Yes, we do. Ganon
Because-
specifically states, was that the
Oh, yeah.
sword that seals the darkness?
That's-
He knew that blade was a threat. Why else would
He
he
knew
call
the
it the
blade-
sword that seals the darkness?
It's funny you mentioned that because he actually went out of his way to like inflict gloom upon every sword in the entire planet because he actually didn't know what to do. So
Well, he
it's
still
funny.
knew he
It's
had
kind of
to
a plot
target the
point.
Master Sword. So,
Right,
this
because like that
also
one actually did something.
Maybe he was thinking about Excalibur.
Ganon wouldn't know to target the One Ring. And in the instance that was discussed earlier, Ganon actually wasn't flooding Link entirely. He only engulfed one of his arms, which means Sauron has plenty of time to teleport out or escape. Or if Ganon is particularly unlucky, he attacks the wrong arm. Ganon wouldn't know to attack the One Ring whatsoever, especially because it's designed to be so unassuming. Ganon has to hope Sauron stands there for 15 seconds uninterrupted and just stands there and lets his stuff get busted, which isn't immediate, and it has to be total engulfment. Because I'm also going to point out that throughout Tears of the Kingdom, there are many weapons that are infected with gloom. You can get them in puddles of this stuff all over the game, and you can use them. And what's funny is those weapons aren't destroyed, despite the fact that I think we can all agree they are vastly inferior to the Master Sword. So why are those basic, boring Traveler Swords unshattered and can even be repaired when the Master Sword is destroyed? It had to be total engulfment and annihilation across an extended period of
Not
time,
quite.
uninterrupted. If those other weapons were able to survive, this is just completely inconsistent. So, Ganon
There's a
has to
few-
pull this off for 15 seconds without interruption and hope Sauron doesn't just teleport out, which he's going to do. Sauron's not an idiot. He has to fully engulf the right arm. He doesn't even know it's the ring, but for the sake of argument, let's assume this happens. There's one other little piece of context with the Master Sword feat that doesn't get brought up very often, and Sherm, now you might want to start getting ready some scans.
All right.
Sherm, please pull up Diminished Master Sword A.
Why do you say it with so much power?
I would love to point out here that there's a bit of a difference in the wording. The Master Sword is not destroyed. It is merely decayed or diminished. That means
Diminish.
there is a bit of power left in it, which of course is also a plot point given that Zelda is able to recharge it. And sure, if you can pull up the second one, this might take a minute. Obviously, it's got to transfer between the two. I got two images for this one. We can even see one of the Master Sword's shards damages Ganon even after it got blown up. So that magic is clearly still intact, no matter how weakened it may be. So let's assume worst case scenario, Ganon does blow up the ring across 15 seconds of uninterrupted time with a full engulfment, and Sauron just stands there like an idiot. It wouldn't actually completely destroy the ring's power. That magic would still be there. Sauron's power would survive, able to keep fighting on. Would Sauron be weakened? Absolutely. But would he be finished off or killed? Well, not killed, because like Kerbo himself has agreed he can't conventionally kill Sauron, but he wouldn't be diminished enough because his power would still survive in the ring, no matter how weakened it may be. Gloom effectively is not able to finish the job. It can only weaken Sauron to a certain point, and just like it wasn't able to destroy the Master Sword, it cannot destroy the One Ring either. And given Sauron
So
resists
there's-
all of its other attacks, it's just not going to work.
So
I like
what happens if instead of and covering the ring for 15 seconds, he covers it for like 30 seconds?
I mean, why would Sauron allow that to happen? I mean, Sauron's smart. He's going
I
to
like
realize
to point
Gloom's
out
a
something.
He's
problem
really
and
interested and he
protect
wants
it.
to see what happens.
I think the resistance makes
Curious.
sense. It's just my big question is it kind of sounds like you're describing it like there's only so much damage it can do, but it kind of sounds like just based on what I'm seeing, if it was in the gloom for long enough, it does seem like it would get destroyed all the way. Even
Well-
it does sound like it could resist it for a couple of
I would like to
seconds,
point
which is
out-
very important in a fight like this. I'm just thinking like theoretically it is possible that that could destroy the ring with enough time.
Well, I
from what I'm
agree to the
hearing.
point that with the gloom he used, it still fully engulfed the Master Sword, which, as Kerbo helpfully pointed out, was then sent through time, where it spent an even longer period of time and was able to be recharged when Zelda triggered her Light Dragon power. So it was
I
definitely
like to-
more than just those few seconds. That would have been, depending on how you look at the Light Dragon thing, over 1,000 years, and Gloom couldn't destroy the Master Sword or its powers.
Does it still
So,
have
no.
gloom on it after that?
It did, yes. When Rauru sends it back, it still had gloom on it. That was the whole point that Kerbo himself brought up. So no,
like-
gloom
no.
time period would not be capable of doing the job. In fact, look at you can see the gloom on it right there. It's like in a dried off state, but it's still there, and the Master Sword
That's
is still
still.
working.
I just thought it was like corroded. I didn't realize like that was like it was still gloom. That was like
No,
attached
no,
to
No,
the
that's
Master Sword
corrosion.
still gloom.
That's corrosion. I would like to point out
Zelda
10
even
issues with.
about?
I would like to point out like a lot of issues with
Whose
your
dog is
argument.
that?
Yeah, we got
Um,
the dog on the mic.
Who let the dog
Oh,
out?
Yo,
who got a dog on
okay,
the
dog
mic?
is
We got a dog out.
can we get their opinion on Ganondorf versus Sauron? It's not the debate because they kind of have a small brain, but how cool the matchup is. Because any true dog knows how cool Ganondorf versus Sauron is. For
my
real, for
dogs.
He's so true.
Yo, what the dog saying?
what the dog doing is the better question.
He's eating the mic.
Let him
He's
cook.
eating a mic. Let him cook.
So what argument were we
Anyway,
about to
I got-
make?
Honestly, I got a ton of points against that. There's a lot of fallacies in this that I like to use, and of which is like the assumption that like, okay, so the first one, if I remember correctly, is that he uses like, hey, well, it took like, even if you're being generous, like 15 seconds for Ganondorf to absorb Link health, right? But that assumes, first off, which is not really supported by anything, that it's based upon your lifespan upon things, right? Or rather, existing lifespan. And you use the idea that because Sauron has lived like this long, he should have quote this much, this much like vitality. That's completely contradicted by the fact that he gets like instantly like he has his life force completely dissipated a lot of the times. So much so that he has to run away for over 1,000 years. Let me get this straight. This dude was cooked by, the Holy Sword, right? I forgot the name of it, frankly. The point is,
The Master
and he had
Sword.
to run away. Nah, it would be funny though. He had to like run away for over 1,000 years, right? Just to regenerate his like actual power, right? So it's to assume that Gloom couldn't just absorb it fast. It's not like a based on your life essence or your like life potency, like timeline, like time gap wise. That just does not like compute with like showings of what Sauron has, right? That doesn't follow. Furthermore, Gloom still, by the way, has killed like beings who had like soul resistance or like the abilities to protect their soul, or hell, even like resistances against gloom. Hell, Link is noted to have a resistance against gloom because he's like, denoted as special because he's like chosen by the goddess. So someone with a innate resistance to gloom has still had his shit stolen. He still had his vitality like completely stripped of him. And you mentioned that, hey, what random dudes that are like afflicted by gloom. There's potencies of gloom, and that is depending on what like source it is from. The the most bare bones level of gloom is just malice, right? And we see that it corrupts like large like groups of land, corrupts enemies, and it makes people sick, right? But that's like a tiny bit of like contact with malice, right? Gloom, it's right. The source is actually Ganondorf himself, right, from the castle. So context-wise, when they get sick, they go near gloom. They don't even touch gloom, right? And hell, even people who like basic people who have touched gloom, basically, noted all their strength being sapped, right? And they had to like recover in the natural daylight, which, notably speaking, if it's not like from Ganondorf himself, like spewing it at you, its remnants are not as potent as it's just like laying out, right? And I like to point out there's so much gloom that like all right, let me just get back on track real quick. The point is to suggest that like because random people are like resisting gloom, that's like disingenuous to the actual like happening what is actually happening. They're getting a barely any influence and they're getting sick until it heals them. That is, they will literally be sick for the course of like forever unless you heal them with like specific sandalians which are made to combat gloom, right? And I would also like to point out, hey, what about this like the weapons that were like like made the fun? Why are they instantaneously destroyed unlike the Master Sword? Again with potency, it's like you're spreading out all this gloom against in the entire world, which is stated, right? All you need to do is just decay the weapons to make them unusable to the average person, so they cannot fight back whatsoever. I'd like to
Question
point out,
about how Sauron would react to having a bunch of gloom on him. Kind of drawn a comparison to how Death Battle treated like Lich King versus Sauron. Like, let's say a bunch of gloom was on Sauron, couldn't he just like get rid of his body, turn to like an intangible ghost, and then recreate a body with no gloom on it?
he
Oh,
cannot
yeah,
recruit
like how
body in
he
very
got
fast.
rid of the plague of undeath in Ganondorf. No, Lich King versus Sauron.
There's large misconceptions about his body. While he, quote, wears his body like a raiment, like, that is the thing with physical like spirits that even I can admit, they cannot regenerate their body very fast at all, which is kind of the issue here, right? Because he can't just, hell, even if he regenerate, like, discarded his body, gloom is noted to afflict the spirit itself, so you can't just discard it unless you were, like, hell, Link had to specifically go to every single shrine, all 152 of them, to get the blessings of light to dispel it from his spirit. You can't just discard it by getting a new body because that goes against like the actual like progression on Tears of the Kingdom. Like you have to like dispel this from your body. It's like it is noted as a miasma, right? So no, even if he made a new body, which by the way takes a long time because that uses a large chunk of his power text wise, he would literally have to like you say quote he has to like withstand 15 seconds of it using your very flawed argument of like the life force thing, which that's not how that works. Regardless, the point is, even if you go by the 15-second thing, Bloom is a passive thing, and he will blast as much. He uses it in every single attack. The more you get attacked by Gloom, the more like it afflicts you. So it's not just blasting; it's just him hitting you. And if he just uses the Flurry Rush, you're already afflicted with a lot more Gloom, especially if you're just hit. It literally saps. Even the basic Gloom that is like lying around, doing not much of anything. If you even so much as step on it, we see it visually just infect your entire body, just like like kind of like tendrils. It goes into your heart and type shit. Like that is not something you can't just like wash off, right? And you can't just avoid it because it's like constantly around you. It is a miasma around Ganondorf. So to say that quote, well, Ganondorf would have to blast him for 15 seconds is completely disingenuous because that doesn't factor in fact for like not only is it passive, not only does he just inflict it by punching, touching, or even like hitting you, right? And it afflicts your spirit, which is the main issue, which even you admitted that it could cause a lot of issues. Hell, the ring, right? You mentioned, hey, what about 30 seconds? There has never been an instance where if you just like it is noted that if you destroy the ring, you destroy Sauron. It dissipates because he is so fundamentally connected. He poured so much of his fear, fire, right, his spirit into the ring. So the headcanon that if you just shatter the ring, he would like still be existing goes against like the point of the ring is that it's indestructible. If you shatter it, that shatters his very essence. So not only would he be weakened, that would just make the win instantly. You don't even need to know of the ring because it deflects all your stuff, like we see with the stages. So to summarize, no, it would not take 15 seconds. Even if you did go by the 15 seconds thing, he passively exudes it, he passively afflicts it upon you, and he just passively does it with everything. And Sauron cannot resist the whole like corrosiveness of it, especially with the ring, with the Master Sword. Even if you're going by MK's ends, so to summarize, no, Gloom will just very be effective, especially if it's like from straight from him, which is more potent.
Hmm.
Hmm.
There are things in Tears of the Kingdom not affected by gloom. I don't remember
There's
what
not
they
much.
all are, but I know that there are
I
some
have
things.
I have a scan of like Gloom instantaneously annihilating like a durability plus Highland Shield fused with Highland Shield, right? Like the fact of the matter that Gloom is so close that it can instantaneously destroy the Highland Shield. Two of them with durability plus. Instantaneously destroy something that is meant to be indestructible. It's not like a slowly sapping at your lifetime thing. No, it is a fundamental corrosion that does not just like factor in.
Is Mineru's spirit affected when like the giant mech is interacting with gloom?
Okay, so in the Sages fight with the Super Stone, okay, so she does get afflicted because in the fight, right, he sends out his Phantom Cannons, right, which by the way would also be pretty effective because they're 100% glue. While Luke is fighting right them, he until half health, he will like let his phantoms fight all the other sages while he himself fights Link. Ivos is dying. But the good side is, as soon as he like blasts Gloom and like absorbs them, Minoru is like out of commission. So yeah, it does. Especially in text wise, it's like noted that it affects your like mind, spirit, and body in like text, and you must like rejuvenate that base level. Like you cannot heal from it. That's mainly the main like effect of it, right? You can't heal from it unless you like directly target the gloom and expel it, which Sauron has no method of doing. Especially if he's completely weakened, especially if since he uses his abilities and he gets like weaker from using those abilities. Because he's kind of on a charge right here. And because like gloom absorbs a lot of that energy that Sauron just simply does not have. In a war of attrition, simply put, Ganondorf just has what it takes to just put him out of commission, especially in terms of skill, because skill-wise, he would be foray rushing and afflicting this gloom. It's not like a one-method attack. This is like he cannot get around gloom. It is just there, and he can't just discard his body because he'll be physically weaker. Hell, I have several scans where he like takes a while to reform his body. I have quote. His influence wasn't your actually. No, wait, that's corruption too. My bad. Let's see here.
We
And
have
you
been
want to
going
know?
for about an hour
Yeah,
50. I think like we can
yeah,
kind of move on from this point to a different power
right,
interaction perhaps.
right.
Yeah,
What point is to summarize? Like, Bloom is, yeah, it's potent.
it built
So
different.
gloom is potentially a way for Ganondorf to maybe be able to incapacitate Sauron for the long run. What does Sauron have to like actually defeat Ganondorf?
Uh, am I back on?
Oh, there you are.
Let me grab my scans. There are a handful of win conditions Sauron has that could pretty reliably and consistently defeat Ganondorf. Let's start with one of my personal favorites. Sherm, in just a minute, I'll need you to grab the Black Breath scan. Not just yet. This is another ability that all Nazgul have. It's called the Black Breath. It's a very potent disease, similar to what Morgoth is capable of, that is able to immediately debilitate and, given enough time, kill the victim. And while it's called the Black Breath, it isn't actually like actual breathing, but it's more like a dark aura that exudes around the user. And this is another instance with the Nazgul where seeing as Sauron is the source of their powers, there's no reason he shouldn't have it. Diseases in The Legend of Zelda are a bit inconsistent. Some people do argue that Ganon should just resist all magical diseases because he resists his own gloom, which I think is a little bit of a weird argument in an NLF. In fact, even referencing Sauron's own episode against the Lich King, they didn't give him resistance against magical diseases just because he resists his own black breath. I don't see why Ganon would be any different. I haven't already said Sauron would probably be affected by gloom diseases, so putting the same leeway on Ganon, the black breath would work on him. And the black breath works much faster than your typical gloom disease, which is generally a relatively basic illness, which can be survived by most people. If you can go ahead and pull up the black breath scan, Sherm, this is immediately after the Battle of Pelennor Fields by a crippled and dying Witch King of Angmar. Meriadoc Brandybuck is basically immediately compromised, and you can see here knocked out, essentially. And shortly after, he's put on death's door and only healed through very unique aid from Aragorn, who has rather specialized healing experience, which isn't something Ganondorf can replicate. Ganon doesn't have a medical license, I'm afraid. So essentially with this, just by getting close to Sauron, Ganondorf gets himself infected with the Black Breath, which at best heavily weakens him and leaves him vulnerable to getting bonked in the skull by a mace, which you can't gloom somebody very well when you're that sick. Or more logistically, he gets so coated in the Black Breath, he just dies. But then we get to where I personally think the battle gets really fun. As we've discussed, both of them are able to survive as souls. In fact, Ganondorf is able to fight as a spirit in Twilight Princess, where he defeats Midna, though we never actually see that battle on screen, so we don't really know too much of what Ganondorf is able to do in that state, especially compared to Sauron still having all of his abilities. But at that point, it becomes more of a spiritual-based battle, because I actually do think both of them have ways past each other's bodies relatively easily. Assuming Ganondorf is stronger, can use gloom to corrode Sauron's body, while Ganon is going to be getting killed by the Black Breath relatively quickly, because I don't think you can apply gloom to all magical diseases, because that's kind of a no-limits fallacy. At that point, it becomes a battle of their souls, and how does one destroy the other? Plus, Ganon's spirit has never been shown using gloom, so that becomes another complication. At that point, though, Sauron has one ability that can very consistently and reliably defeat Ganon. That being absorption. And there are several instances of these soul hacks working on Zelda characters. In fact, let's start with, I think this is going to be a bit of a blast from the past for several of us here from our handy dandy Cordura blog. Sherm, could you go ahead and pull up, what did I name it? Deku Scrub. I think everybody already knows what's coming.
Let's go.
Please forgive the horrible image quality. That scene and the cutscene was...
I mean, I'm convinced already. I don't see how you could look at this and not be convinced of a Sauron victory.
So what's going on here is that Majora is implanting the soul of a killed Deku Scrub onto Link.
We clearly see Sauron beating Ganondorf right here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is definitive proof. But jokes aside, this is in Majora's Mask, the character Majora, who I think many of us are familiar with, the core killer. He implants the soul of a Deku Scrub that he had torn the soul out of earlier, because Majora does that, and implants it onto Link. And this is notable because, as famously covered in the Core versus Majora blog, Link at that time had the Triforce of Courage, which is generally noted to sort of be a catch-all for magical resistances, but it specifically fails to stop Majora's hacks here, even despite the Triforce being there. Majora's soul hacks works, and he's able to implant the Deku Scrub soul onto Link. So that's my first instance of soul hacks working on Zelda characters. I think that's just sort of a good opening volley, because I think that's one everybody's familiar with. I mean, who isn't familiar with Majora's Mask and the Deku Scrubs? If you're not familiar, I don't know what to tell you. At this point, Sherm, could you pull up my other big one, Yuga Fusion? first off, if you haven't played A Link Between Worlds, you should. It's a great game. I love that game so much. It's probably one of the best in the series.
It's mid.
This is... But who said that? Sherm, you should be banned from your own cast. Anyhow, in this awesome game, no matter what Sherm may tell you, the villain Yuga, who looks like a weird clown, he specifically fuses or absorbs Ganon, and as you can see here, this is including the Triforce of Power. And this is very important because I didn't bring in the scan because I didn't want to just avalanche Sherm and scans because that would be kind of mean. But he also does it again later with Princess Hilda when she has the Triforce of Wisdom. So this is 3 very specific and direct cases of these sort of soul
Actually,
or absorption.
interjection.
Yep.
Well, actually, Hilda didn't have the actual Triforce. It was taken by Hilda, so no, she did not actually have the Triforce there.
Well, yeah, he absorbed Hilda when she had the Triforce.
No, but like it was taken beforehand. Is the issue? Yeah, he turned her into painting, took the Triforce, and then did the stuff. So like
she still had the Triforce. The Triforce was in the painting. He specifically says he knew she had what he needed, and then he absorbs her while she still had the Triforce. So no, he absorbed her while she still had the Triforce.
Right, you have to be contextually speaking though, throughout the series, yeah, you have to make them weaker or make them incapacitated in order to steal the Triforce from them, right? Like we see in Wind Waker, Link is knocked out by Ganondorf real quick with a bitch slap, right? And he gets his Triforce piece stolen, and same with Zelda, right? So if you were specially incapacitated, which the Triforce resides in your soul, and you can reach in there, you can take it out. If you were completely weakened and incapacitated, right? So it kind of misses some context because
Well,
yeah,
I actually would cut in. You've actually given me a very good segue into some of my other stuff. But first off, I was just going to say I wasn't actually arguing stealing the Triforce there. I was specifically arguing absorbing Ganon's soul, because at this point, Ganon's body is destroyed by the Black Breath, and Sauron's body is destroyed by, I guess, getting bonked by AP staffs or something. I don't know. Anyhow, Sherm, could you pull up the RIP Celebrimbor scan? I can't use videos, of course, but here is a handy-dandy image of Sauron absorbing Celebrimbor's soul. There he goes. He's gone. Anyhow, this is important because as we saw with Yuga absorbing 2 different Triforce users, the Triforce of Power will not protect Ganondorf's soul from being munched up by Sauron. In fact, Yuga controls the fusion for that entire game. He exhibits his consistent behaviors and mannerisms that entire game. He calls Link a worm. Ganon has no defense against getting his soul absorbed by Sauron. Sauron will dominate the fusion. Ganon's soul is absorbed, controlled, basically defeated. That would be a very, very easy and consistently reliable method of victory for Sauron, as shown by the Deku Scrub instance and both of Yuga's instances. Ganon has no displayed resistance, and in fact, a displayed vulnerability to that very hacks, even with the Triforce of Power. But Kerbo also gave me a really good segue into another thing. He specifically mentioned that you could reach into souls and grab the Triforce, which is very convenient that Kerbo brought this up, because I was also going to mention... Oh, dry, I didn't actually send Sherm that scan. One moment, let me pull up my Discord real quick and send you something, Sherm. Because it's convenient that Sauron has that exact ability. He can specifically target and reach into and change about things between the physical and spiritual stuff. He used this specifically against Eltariel and Celebrimbor in order to split body and spirit while keeping what he wanted of Celebrimbor to merge him. So by the logic that Kerbo himself provided, Sauron actually could take the Triforce of Power, at which point Ganon is just cooked. Just a moment, Sherm. Let me send you the image now. Yeah, what? Well, yeah, I mean, that's the point of a cast. We're supposed to disagree with each other.
What the hell? Why are y'all debating here?
Yes, one person. No, that's a very out there guess. It's going to be...
Well,
No,
they've both been
Kerbo's gonna
doing
be
that
like,
to each
man,
other the whole
actually,
time.
you got me,
1%
MK.
chance,
I invested.
90% faith.
It's just been both of them going back and forth saying, "You're wrong, no, you're wrong," the whole
Yeah,
time.
no, that's what it's been. Sherm, did you get the scan I sent you?
Oh my god. When is one of them just gonna pull out the ultimate argument of "I fucked your mom last night"?
Advert can confirm I would not make that kind of argument.
I think what I'm
not-
hearing from the previous argument is that the real winner was actually the friends we made along the way, and they both
You're
win in
right.
the end because they both become the same thing.
So basically, now this is a very blurry image because I again can't use video
Salsa.
footage. So I'll explain what's going on. Please ignore the fingers. I'm sorry I can't get a less weird image, but this scene is weird. So Sauron slices up Celebrimbor and Altariel. And why this is important is if you can look closely, you'll see he's holding Celebrimbor's arm. And this is weird because he was also holding Altariel's before he sliced it, and yet only she went flying after the slice. So Sauron very specifically targeted and held on to Celebrimbor's soul while deciding to fling Altariel away after the attack. So yes, Sauron can specifically target and grab what he wants, the soul-based stuff. So conveniently, by the logic Kerbo himself previously just gave us, Sauron actually could target, remove, and collect the Triforce, or alternatively, just absorb Ganon and win the battle that way. Both of these are things Ganon has shown an explicit vulnerability to, as displayed with Yuga and Majora.
Or actually,
Interesting. Can you do this to someone that's like perfectly like healthy and in their prime, or does he have to like knock him around a little bit first?
He got Celebrimbor while Celebrimbor was still in a relatively okay state, but I would note
It was
even
after a
then
boss fight.
you could argue technically he needs to remove the body, but at that point you could also just point out that Sauron was able to split the body and soul just fine and then do the absorb. So either way, you're still going to get to the same result. So it's not really an issue. Sauron has ways to bypass it via Black Breath, soul splitting, just absorbing them, stealing the Triforce. He has a lot of ways to circumvent that issue entirely, if it even is one, which I will say is a bit up to interpretation, but it doesn't really matter which way you go because Sauron can just ignore it. He has like 5 different ways. And for the advert in the room, it is something he would go for pretty quickly, given he immediately went for it on Celebrimbor the second he got an advantage in that fight.
Well,
He gets it
mostly
off
correct,
his
but it was
entire
after
arm,
a
though.
boss fight. It was after a boss fight, so.
Well, yeah, but Sauron didn't really have any
It's-
chance to grapple Celebrimbor during that boss fight. So it's like the
He
second he
actually
was
did.
able to grapple him, he handled that business pretty
It
well.
seems, it still seems like he's gonna use it. It's just, it seems like it would be like a little bit later game if it took him that long to grab Ganon, because they're gonna be teleporting around each other a lot. So.
Oh yeah, it's
Same.
I do think Sauron would be able to last long enough where it gets to that point. I do think once it reaches a certain point, he's going to go for it. It's not something he's never going to use.
Right.
I like to point out, for the whole Caligan
Trying to dry.
Oh, mine too.
I like to point out,
Yeah, my
he's a
voice.
bitch.
Oh, shut up, Advert.
Objection.
This is why you
Objection,
hydrate.
Your Honor.
Make sure you have water.
I brought a drink, thankfully.
All right. So they're going through all these points again. Oh boy.
Wait, how many
Hydration
points are you going over?
check. All of them because they're all
Okay,
gone.
timeout. Pause.
Oh wow, man! Who
Might be a bit
predicted
long.
he disagreed?
I'd like to just throw out there
Oh,
that we
just,
have recently surpassed 2 hours. So I'd like
Yeah.
to throw out
Tired.
maybe instead of I love the in-depth, and this is exactly what I was hoping for. This is why I got y'all for this one. I do think maybe we should kind of try to hit like the last remaining big stuff at this point.
All right, let me
trying
go
to,
real.
like-
Let me speed up all these arguments real quick then. All right. So you mentioned the Deku thing. The Deku thing was contextually based upon like Tor, right? With the the Triforce occurred thing, right? Which I understand, but that's more so like a transmutational thing. It was a transmutational thing more so than it is like a purely soul thing, like you mentioned. So that has an issue there. What was your second point again? Sorry, I'm just gonna speed blitz through all these.
A Yuga fusion.
fusions, the Black.
Oh yeah, the Yuga fusion. So the Black Breath issue. There's nothing really stopping Ganondorf from just like resisting from the Gloomstaff, or especially from the matter that like that was like attempted. Like I think he was even attempted in like a Link to the Past. Actually, there's like actually that's
Nobody
kind of
tried
like
to make
yeah,
Ganon sick in A Link to Past.
actually no, there's like actually some sick stuff with a Link to the Past, especially with the Dark World stuff. Because if you're in the Dark World, you're consciousness with it.
But that
Point
was
is,
all
I was-
controlled by Ganon. That's a case of just because you have the hex doesn't mean you resist your own hex. It's like this is like Ghost Rider versus Spawn territory.
Like I have a
Right,
gun, but
well-
I'm not bulletproof.
most of the
not.
All
stuff can be like.
self controls. I don't see why we'd say
The funny thing is,
This
Germ,
loser's
so
not
he has the
bulletproof.
vaccine against everything.
yeah, the funny thing is that
Not
like Link
same
can
in
like
any
absorb
regard.
the attacks from the Master Sword and like send them back, right? Which would still have the same effect. Like he can like Ganondorf can tank his own magic and tank his own effects, especially with like averted gloom, right? So it's not unheard of that Ganondorf has just like faced his own shit, especially with the whole like tennis matches. Which, by the way, Ganondorf would be superior in tennis, by the way.
I do.
But yeah, like he has faced with like his own magic, so saying that he wouldn't like resist it is kind of dubious at best. Furthermore, the fact of the matter that like it's noted that because Ganondorf is chosen by the goddesses, his soul is protected from malediction, right? And hell, even after like even targeting right with like the Triforce of like wisdom, he himself cannot be like removed, right? Because like his cycle of hatred is manifesting from demise, right? Demise put that in the first place, and that will be forever, right? That curse itself sustains Ganon. You cannot remove that curse itself, and furthermore, you cannot remove you can't just absorb him because he's majorly protected by the goddesses because of that cycle and that role,
How
right?
did Yuga do
And if
it?
why did Yuga do what? Like absorb Ganondorf? There's a difference, right? You're talking about his like intrinsic soul, right? Versus like the whole fusion process, which by the way, it required a larger ritual, which you did not touch upon. The fact of the matter is because like that Ganon was interestingly like wasn't it botched actually rather that Ganondorf is okay. We mostly face Yuga in the events of like the low roll, right? We don't actually face Ganon until like a split second towards the end, and even then, that fusionism thing isn't like main like Hyrule's Ganon. I don't believe it. Wasn't it like low rules? Wasn't it? Like it took a long ass
Isn't
process.
Yuga supposed to be like low rules version of Ganon?
Yeah, like
It's generally implied, yeah.
yeah. It's probably
Yuga
that,
absorbed like the Ganon.
If you're
Right, but
talking
that
about
was after-
like the botched resurrection version, then I can kind of see that. Maybe he was
But it's
also
also
more willing to participate in that, but I don't know.
If I remember correctly,
Well,
like
for-
Yuga's
died.
ritual didn't go bad. It worked exactly as it was
Yeah, it
intended
worked
to.
exactly fine.
Right.
And the ritual
Right, it
wasn't
took a
for
lo-
fusion, it was just to break the seal. Because Ganon was still locked up who knows where at the time. That was just to get him out.
If I do recall correct, it was still like it was a long time like fusionism. It went perfectly fine, right? But I'm saying like using specifically that Ganon, right? Right, which he didn't have the Triforce of Power. It's just like his form, his big form. Fusing with that
It did have
was
the
not
Triforce power,
constitute-
though.
No, Yuga had the Triforce of Power. The Ganon itself did not.
No, I think
He got the Triforce of Power from Ganon. That he literally fused with Ganon so he could get the Triforce of Power. That was the whole point of the plan.
Yuga had the Triforce beforehand. Unless I'm like forgetting
No, he
something. Like
Yeah, no,
Yeah, he-
sure,
yeah,
if
you
you
got-
I
watch
will
Ganon
fact
again, you
check
can
this.
see Ganon
Early
had the
Ganon,
Ganon
Triforce.
scene.
wasn't Yuga possessed with the Triforce of Power? Like he said,
No,
man, all this fucking.
Ganon had the Triforce of Power. That was the whole reason Yuga summoned him. The whole point of the plan was to get the Triforce. Wait, if Sherm would
It's
pull up
probably-
my Yuga scan,
I'm sure
you
you-
would even see that they had the Triforce of Power right there.
Yeah, I'm sure you're
never
correct
died
or
again.
whatever. But like,
So
my point
Yuga
is this-
gains control of the Triforce of Power by fusing with Ganon.
Yeah. And Everett's back.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Is he?
audio issues.
I felt that. The point is, like, all this is like encompassing for the fact. Sorry, my mic is being funny. All this is encompassing for the fact that like he still is protected by the goddesses, right? And hell, even notably in Twilight Princess, right, where Link has the Triforce of Courage, has the Master Sword, which is powered by the Soul power, like SOL, by the way, not Soul. Hell, actually no, it was actually boosted by the Spiritual Lights. Never mind. Point is, even all that, right? And even with all that resistances, right, which is layered more so than I can admit for Sauron, Ganondorf can like resist that gloop, that Twilight gloop, which that itself can like still transmute Link and like mess with his soul, like, but he's still not like altered to the point where he's like absorption, right? Because notably in Twilight Princess, if usually what happens if you're like into Twilight, your soul gets like dissipated and like you turn into like a wanderless spirit. Ganondorf, Link, and Zelda are both all protected by under the goddesses. So to say Sauron could just simply absorb it is inaccurate. Also, the fact that his absorption would have to like be a contest of wills, which Sauron has major issues within like actually like combating willful people. You can resist his will, you can resist his powers, and that's mainly the issue with like a lot of them. Because for instance, like if you're trying to like overpower something, you know, not only will the fear of something, right, hold something back because fear is malleable. Or sorry, not as malleable as like actual like resistance. Point is, if this instance of Sauron trying to absorb Ganondorf, it would be a matter of contest of wills, and Ganondorf is far too determined to just kind of let that happen, right? So it'd be kind of a battle. You also ignore the fact that like that doesn't really account for the fact that like physical flies, if they got on a counter, right, they would both start off physical. Ganondorf would overpower him, afflict him with gloom, and not only would his spirit be weakened, right, by that same gloom which afflicts the spirit, you need strength of the spirit to overpower Ganondorf, which is noted as protected, noted as strong, right? So not only does it miss the point, like gloom itself would actually lead into the spiritual battle. Again, Sauron has never really pulled this off, ever. Even like against battles where he probably should have done this, especially for the fact that he consistently runs away if he is taken into his spirit form. And with Celebrimbor, I checked, he had to do an entire boss battle with 2 fucking phases, and guess what? That person that he fused with, like, it was contextually speaking, it was like, because he was using the ring against Sauron, which, by the way, you can do, and that's fully, like, you're able to do that, and even just take the ring from him and just reel it. Point is, he had to like go through a whole fight, cut off his arm, and Celebrimbor was also fused with this other woman. I really forgot her name, honestly.
Altariel.
It's kind of a yeah. Like it was a whole ass process, and he physically tried to like overpower Sauron's like will, right? And that was his mistake because Sauron ended up cutting off his arm, severing his connection to the ring, and gaining the ring and like having that issue. But like, if your core of the argument, let's just break it down. If your core of the argument is to just overpower Ganondorf and absorb him, that does not constitute the fact that doesn't consider the fact that gloom would make his spirit weaker than Ganondorf's, which is also protected, much like Sauron's, but also the fact that like he would still be a lot of dissipated against the whole power issue, right, with gloom, right? So your point is completely null. Funny, get it? No,
Oh, good.
because that's probably an next point. But like,
Why?
it's pitted. I think, can we just all ignore null? Just kidding. I'm just not doing that. But point is, like, his soul would be weakened by gloom. Has to overpower Ganondorf. Is repeated verbatim stated that he has to overpower people through will and coercion to get that method through, and only did so to Celebrimbor after severing his arm and getting his ring back. So no, that wouldn't really work whatsoever. Anyway, sorry. Kind of need to wrap this up somewhat soon, but like, does that kind of get the message across?
More or less,
mean,
yeah.
I would raise the counter that Yuga dominated the fusion with Ganon, which is kind of a glaring issue, and Sauron directly overpowered Celebrimbor's domination attempts throughout that entire game. Like, Celebrimbor tried to do that exact tactic you mentioned several times, like right before the fusion, and Sauron no-sold it. So, if anything, Sauron's showings in the Battle of Domination are quite superior because Ganon lost his and Sauron won his. So if it came down to that, I'd argue the other way around.
There's a issue there because if you're only factoring in like low-roll stuff, yeah, maybe you had a point. But you also have to factor in the Twilight Princess stuff. You also have to factor in Tears of the Kingdom. Like these other ones
I
that
mean,
have like the opposite issue,
I'm gonna ask
especially
a
with the
dumb
fact that like,
question.
what's up?
Yeah, sure.
Isn't the Ganon that Yuga absorbs dead?
It's kind of made unclear because he he shows
that
up
point
in.
in the timeline, he's not, but he's dead by the end of where we currently are in the timeline. He dies in the NES
Yes,
Zelda.
it was a sequel to a Link Between Worlds, and he was like murdered.
Isn't there like
So
a
it's like a
line where like Ganondorf is killed forever in that game?
Wait, yeah, isn't A Link
Ganon dies
Between
in the NES
Worlds
Zelda.
the game in question?
Yeah, A Link Between Worlds, he survives. Ganon dies for good in the NES Legend of Zelda specifically, which is the next game in the timeline, funnily enough.
Is that the same Ganon as that?
So it's not a
It is
dead
Ganon,
body
is
of
this?
Ganon. It is just like
No,
the
it
actual
is a living
Ganon.
Ganon.
Okay, never mind.
It
Then I
is a living.
apologize.
I would
Because
say
I was
it's
confused this whole
speaking-
time. I was like, he overpowers him, and I was like, isn't he overpowering like a corpse? Okay, never mind. That
Yeah,
makes more
I
sense.
would also point out on the Twilight Princess things, you're comparing two completely different hacks. Because with the Twilight stuff, that's more of a transmutation thing, and you're using that to argue against.
Actually, it was like a
absorption?
will.
That's
It was a will thing,
not
actually.
the same thing. It's like
it
transmutation
was like a
and
point
will
against
and
will.
absorption. They're all
The
completely
Deku
different
Scrub
stuff.
also
I don't see
transmutation?
how. The Deku Scrub was transmutation and also having a soul implanted onto him, which I argued was comparable enough to like the soul tear
Actually,
stuff.
that was more
Sauron to pull
so
that
a
off.
curse manipulation thing, not a really like implanting. It was
I mean, what
it
was
a
he doing
curse,
with that Deku Scrub soul then? I mean, he had to put it somewhere.
right? But like he transmuted that
He ate it.
into a curse. It was a curse manipulation thing more so. If you want to go that route.
And what did he do with that Deku Scrub soul?
I'm telling you, to a curse. That's kind of the issue there. So
Yeah, I mean, he was still tearing it out if he was turning it into a curse. It's a different word, the same effect.
I'm sorry, are we talking about Zelda or JJK now?
We're
both.
talking about Chainsaw Man.
Oh, okay.
I think this is Naruto.
Is it One Piece?
So
Wait, I
Sauron
One
thought
Piece
this
is
was a
real.
topic
versus
cast.
Ganondorf.
Hello,
Besides
everybody.
Gloom,
My name is MKF4, and welcome to Five Nights at Freddy's.
Besides
No,
Gloom,
Yeah.
does
Topic
Sauron
cadence
have a
like
way
this.
to deal
Oh,
with
no.
Sauron?
Hello, everybody. My name is the Dark Lord Esther, and today I'm here to play some Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
This dude's
Maybe
gonna
we'll
kill
figure
us.
out who the man behind the slaughter is.
what the hell?
Everyone's just
Jesus
freaking out.
Christ, man.
We
What
just
the hell?
devolved into chaos. We've devolved into chaos the second Five Nights at Freddy's evolved.
You could say we're waiting every night for this debate to end.
So Ganondorf versus Sauron. Does Ganondorf
Oh, right, that's what
have
we're
a
here for.
way to deal with Sauron beyond just Gloom, or is Gloom kind of like
Advance.
his big thing that's gonna save?
Oh, yeah,
him,
there's-
right?
There's also another aspect. It's the still world in BFR, which it's if you want to add another hour, it's the still world. I'll summarize it argument quickly, but effectively,
Quickly
If
or
it gra-
quickly?
You don't have to talk about it for an hour. You can just talk about it for like
No, I'll
2
just
minutes.
summarize.
No, he's
summarize.
obligated to talk about it for an hour legally.
Right,
He
legally
does,
speaking.
In the
and
contract.
Oh
there
my
is a
god.
fine.
Was
waiting
that the
for
bite
him
of
outside.
87?
Dude.
Yeah, but all right, the still world,
I'm losing
which
my
by
mind.
the way, it would effectively like grab Sauron, petrify him. It would BVR him into the still world, which is like a world that is distinct lack of like distinction. Literally, it is a literal distinct of lack of distinction. It's kind of similar to the timeless halls in the fact that both lack time, both lack space, somewhat. Actually, I don't know if timeless hall lack space because they kind of walk around it. Point is, it's kind of a void, right? It's not so distantly from the timeless halls, except the fact that like it makes a distinction of being called like what is called mood, right? Which is the distinction of like a lack, right? It is neither non-existence or existence. It is literally neither, right? And that's something special because that's not something Sauron itself has ever dealt with, unless you're considering like the preconception of Ea, which, you know, if he is ever sent into the still world, he'd kind of end up like Melkor, unable to do anything, unable to like come back, unable to. He'd be effectively a disembodied thought. He'd still exist, which is kind of, you know, notable because he can't destroy souls, but he'd be like completely powerless here. mainly due to the fact that like the argument is he would retain like the argument that MK's probably might use is that he would like regain his true form or like he quote cannot be removed, but this notion is like proven false by Melkor being banished to the void, or like the Sun Spirit that was like she was removed when she fought Melkor, but the point is Melkor didn't regain his power when he was like sent into the void, so that's not going to be an issue here. He was literally rendered inert, right? It also, I'm not sure if we're being using this, but like, I'm not going to touch it. There's a non-canon story or dubiously canon that like Melkor returns from the void. Whatever. Point is,
Isn't this just like the eventual like that's gonna
yeah,
happen?
he like he
but has it
he
happened in any
eventually like
stories we know
he
of?
eventually like comes back and like gets killed by this dude with a sword. I forgot his name. It's kind of a myth that like in the future, but like it's like
Melkor was betrayed and left in the hyperbolic timeless halls for
That's funny.
No,
years.
no, not the hyperbolic time chamber trolls.
The point is,
Guys, no, the chains. The chains.
Ah, I'm being held down.
But
Anyway, those were
like,
aluminum chains.
Oh, not the aluminum chains.
so much like Melkor, like Sauron is also connected to the world, right? It's not as like it's just like his connection is through the ring. It's noted as concentrated. So if you send that, which by the way, ignoring the glow stuff, right? If you just sent him there, right? His connection is still like kind of bound to Eo through the ring. So most of his powers like kind of stemmed from there, right? But whether that can contextually be expressed as like an influence, like it is with Melkor and his influence over evil in the world, or like physically bound, it would actually go with the former because it's expressing the influence of Melkor even post-management. So to summarize, Ganondorf could just send him into the still world and not really worry about it because Sauron can't really do much. He'd effectively be turned into kind of like a Melkor kind of situation there, where he's not really able to do anything. Especially given the fact that Sauron doesn't have a method to just do anything because what the still world does to you is power negates you, petrifies you in such a potency that like because you were made to lack distinction, right? So he would just effectively be put into that state again, into like a formless state rather, where he can't really do anything.
So
I'm
that's
going
the
to
sole...
address this
Actually,
with
I'm
single
gonna
question.
kind of take control of format real quick. Is we're just gonna power
Aw.
through all of Ganondorf's relevant abilities, and then you can talk about the big stuff. Because I'm kind of trying to streamline this a little bit. You will get a chance to say what you wanted to say, though.
Okay.
Besides the still world and besides the gloom, does Ganondorf have anything else that's particularly relevant in terms of having the ability to get rid of Sauron?
Greater physical stats, which I would argue it's really useful because with greater speed, he can just annihilate his body, and as a disincentive spirit, Sauron is a lot weaker compared to his like other forms. So if he just uses his stats right and just blitzes him effectively, which by the way, with greater like level, like he has a Triforce power which multiplies his power and his stats. He also has a like Secret Stone which multiplies his speed and stats as well. So he has like a lot of methods to just kind of like overpower. Like even if you have their base forms as equal, which I would argue that Ganondorf has a good edge about, right? Especially with the whole Ronatun's feat versus the Petaton. So he's actually operating with them a lot superior. He would just kind of like have the stat trinity just necessary to just kind of destroy Sauron, honestly.
All right.
So it's stats, gloom, still world, and probably some other stuff I don't really mention.
So, MK, you can kind of respond to his arguments now. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just kind of wanted to feel
No, that's
like
fine.
we had finished up like the Ganondorf side of things before we got to your turn.
I am going to ask Kerba one thing. When
So-
exactly in the canon did Ganondorf ever use the still world? Because last I checked, that wasn't Ganon who used it. That was an echo specifically created by Null. Ganon isn't even in that game at all.
Actually, he is in that game. You actually like in the beginning of the game that is actually Ganon, and that
That was
trident.
an echo. And even if you did argue it was the real Ganon,
No, it was
you've
the
got
Ganon.
nothing. Even if you did argue that, you've got nothing to definitively prove that Trident of Darkness was directly tied to something that Ganon himself knew how to utilize, because Ganon was dead by that point. that it wasn't just tied to Noel's own abilities, because Noel was actively trying to get into the world by that point. You don't really have a way to argue it except Ganon dies and then it triggers, assuming Sauron hasn't gotten rid of the Trident of the Darkness by that
the actual
point.
trigger is just hitting the ground with the trident is the issue. Like the actual
But
trigger, like
He's hit the ground with the Trident numerous times before in the past, and that never happened.
actually,
Is it
yeah,
ever
but this is like
specified that it's the Trident that does it? I kind of thought, based on the
Yeah, it's
backstory
the-
that we were
it's the-
given, he kind of just has the ability to do it.
no, yeah, it's sad, but it's also the trident because of the darkness. So it's specifically Echoes of Wisdom and Ganon, which, by the way, it is the actual Ganon. It's not an echo because the way he dies, we actually, and it's also noted like backstory in Echoes that like that Ganon was causing a lot of issues. That Link had to like look. This Link was fully prepared. Like this was like the end of a story Link, right at the beginning of the game. That he bested Ganon there, right? And that Tread in Darkness has that ability to do that. To say like he can't do that is kind of weird because he does.
But he never does it. It happens after he dies, and we have nothing proving that it wasn't tied to Noel's powers, given Noel breaks in like immediately after.
The Still World isn't effectively Noel's power. Noel just has a method to just spread it effectively. Because like Noel is like the embodiment of the void, but he isn't the void. The Still World just refers to the actual void itself. So it wouldn't just be Noel's power. So that's not a correct notion is the issue.
But okay, well, look at it this way: would Ganon even go for this in character? Like, if Ganon had this power, why didn't he use it on Link before, and why did it only trigger after he dropped dead?
Ganondorf has actually used BFR a lot actually in combat. For example, like Phantom Ganon,
But not
he
the
does
Still
not-
World, which is the one you were arguing.
Right, but this Still World would actually be effective means of the BFR, especially because he would use it because he's using Trident, and he would like effectively, if he had the ability, he would use it against Sauron if he's noticing that like Sauron is like really freaking hard to kill. So why not send him somewhere else? Because that's kind of what he
We
does.
don't even
before.
have proof he knows how to use that ability. He's never even displayed the knowledge that the Trident has that power, because he was dead when it happened.
Well, if you go by effects wise, like literally visual effects wise, then he was using that power in the Trident, just not using the void power of it. But he did stab the world as a last ditch effort to like, affect Link and like get him into the Still World. So he does know of the power because like he deliberately does it, right?
That seems
It's
very
also a matter of fact.
heavy.
But even if you ignore that point, right? Does Sauron have a method to just interdimensional travel? It's the issue, like because for example, like for a fun one, he sends a Phantom Ganon in between the gap between dimensions, which that alone is already quite an issue for Sauron because it takes a lot of power to actually like do abilities, right? So, but he has not really shown interdimensional travel aside from in the inception of Ea, which was kind of granted to him. It's kind of a long process, but point is, does he actually have any interdimensional travel?
He actually does have some curves. Like we mentioned in the Sinestro versus Morgoth blog, all Einar are specifically bound to Ea by Iluvatar himself. So unless Ganon starts getting some hacks that can overpower Iluvatar's own binds, which
I was figuring
not
you were
happen.
gonna bring this up with the whole like bound to it.
I'm not done
Oh,
yet.
my bad.
Turbo.
You go. My bad.
I was also going to bring up, though, speaking of the Still World, what happened to our screen? Oh, we're just fumbling around. Okay. There are also other beings that can survive within the Still World. First off, I mean, I just don't think petrification would work on Sauron at all, given his own shape-shifting powers, but that's besides the point. There are these little beings called the Tri, or Tree, or I'm going to assume it's Tri.
Yeah, let's try. They're yeah.
These little guys are sort of like divine agents of the golden goddesses and have the ability to break back into, undo, or restore the world that's been corrupted by the Still World. And this is notable in that they are armed with some of the very power of the golden goddesses themselves and can sort of restore that world's original form despite Noel tearing at it, which is eerily similar to what the Einar are and what they can do. They are also divine agents who are able to enter or reshape the world according to their own being. So logistically, given the similarities, Sauron would likely just be capable, if he was even put into the Still World, which is unlikely given Iluvatar's binds, of just reopening the portal back home with his very similar powers to what the Tri can do, and exiting that way. He is of a similar rank to what the Tri are, and his powers are fundamentally very similar. In fact, he also has the world reshaping stuff, so there's no reason he wouldn't be able to, especially given he doesn't really have a way to be petrified. So yeah, I think Sauron has great
Most
counters
less of
to BFR, and I don't expect Ganon to win with it.
So to address that, isn't Sauron a Maya? An Einer, but whatever.
Yeah, but they're
Point
all
is, he
Einer. I
should-
mean,
I-
Meyer is an Einer.
Right, they should have like some they do have a capability of like altering the world at some level, but it's noted as the physical matter of the universe, not the actual like. For in context of here, because like what petrifies you is like you lack the distinction. Right, when you were put in this world, you were made to lack the distinction of existing and not existing, which actually goes beyond the actual void that they're maybe used to. Right. So if it's like a distinction thing, it's not like a matter of like removing them by the way from like Ia or like being bound to, because like the still world is still just it's not like removing it a matter of it, right? It's like here, let me find the argument that I made before.
Someone's fighting in the background.
What?
There was a mass mob in the back.
Oh.
The Hordes demand Ganon versus Sauron.
Right.
They wish for it.
Anyway, the point is like contextually, like for the like expression thing, like if it's like influence over the world, like physically bound, because that point doesn't factor in the fact that Melkor was removed from the world, but that contradicts itself. So I would argue that it's more so in regards to like an influence thing, I suppose. If there's kind of easier words to describe it, but like they have been removed from the world. Like I mentioned, like the Sun Spirit has been removed, Melkor has been removed. Like it's not unheard of for them to be removed, especially the fact that as a lesser Maya, he's a Maya, and if Melkor, who is greater than him, was removed from the world, I don't see how he couldn't be, especially since given that like hell, even if you went that far, right? The still world is just a removal of existence. It's still the world, right? It's noted in the lore, right, that it's not directly outside the multiverse in a way that expresses it. Like, it's a matter of, like, a void of potential. It lacks distinction, but eventually it will formulate something, right? And spirits did eventually formulate in some capacity, right? Not far off from, like, the inception, right? It's just a matter of, like, you can like spirits have been removed, right? That's a fact. And if you like put him in the still world, he would effectively be reverted to a state of like inapplicability. He wouldn't be able to like act because of what the still world does to you, right? No, hell, even if you go in between the gaps with dimensions and you send him there, I don't know if he can like effectively like create a portal there, right? I'm not really quite sure about the whole like interdimensional scans. But the point is, with the still world, it's kind of a null point. Yeah, get it?
Ooh, get off the stage.
Also, did Advert die or something? Because like,
I
he's
hear
in
the
the thing.
phone battery was draining a little
Advert
bit.
isn't
He's
real.
gonna be coming back.
He's a myth.
Yeah, Advert is a myth.
The real
Maybe we
the
just
true
all
Advert
hallucinated him.
was the friends we made along the way.
Yeah,
Don't
if
you know
Advert's
you've been
hearing this,
underfocused
we've
who he gets for
decided
this
you're a
whole time?
myth. He's a fake. I think he'll be back here in a few minutes, though. I think his charge was running low or something, and he just needed to recharge for a few minutes before he returned.
That's what they want you to think.
You're right.
The ability for Sauron to be trapped in the still world seems incredibly nuanced. Even after hearing everything y'all said, I'm still not sure if it would work or not. Why would it being non-existent negate Sauron's kind of try-like ability to just open a portal back?
Because like for example, like when you say try-like ability, do you mean like a restoration thing? Because hell, even the tries themselves, right? Like in the void, if they're like not like at full capacity, right? And if they're not collected together in a conglomerate, right, and like powered up, they cannot actually restore the world itself. And much less the fact that Null, for a side note, right, he absorbs tries, right? So it's not a matter that it is a direct counter in opposition. It's more so like you have to be prepared, right, power wise, to actually like combat the issue, and especially if like if there's any gloom weaknesses or yada yada. It's more so a tie-in, right? So I don't see how like his nature as a which by the way, I'm not quite sure Sauron actually would be able to recreate, right? Because that's still a lack of distinction. It's like it just goes beyond what Sauron himself has kind of done as a Maya rather. He's still the greatest of the Maya. He just doesn't correlate very well.
I mean, Maiar are not nearly as strong as Valar, but like they are still
Right.
partially responsible for creating like the world, are they not? Like they still like do stuff like make like
They do, yeah.
Yeah, they
parts of
make
the
they
landscape.
make the yeah they make the stars, right? And they do the like
Yeah, the
parts of like the
Paladin
physical.
stars.
Oh, my bad, my bad. But like, in terms of the physical aspect, but if you send them here, there is no physical aspect to manipulate. Is the issue because there's not a distinction of like because the still world is a lack of distinction, right? So there's not much to influence it because there's nothing there,
Do
literally.
Maiar
And
manipulate the world, or do they like just create the world?
they
Technically do
they do a
both.
process of like they kind of do both. Most of the Maya like manipulate the world. Some have the capabilities to like create and sing out of nothing. Like some of the Valar, for instance, like incepted their new themes like mourning into like the world. The point is for Sauron, he's not really shown that capability because Sauron is really kind of spiteful and not. He's never really shown anything of that capacity, much less with the whole like if Ganondorf just sends him to like Dark World, right, or just interdimensional, or like if he just BPRs him, there's not much he can do if he is in any weakened state.
Hmm.
So there's like so
Do
effectively the wind. Oh, what's up?
no, I was just gonna try to fill the silence. Please say something. You have something to say.
Yeah, but effectively like the win conditions for Sauron is to kind of assume like the Black Death would work on him. I'm just gonna call it the Black Death for now. The Black Death would work on him, right? And do kind of like a instant soul absorption kind of deal, right? And if that's his win con, is, is that his main win con, or is there other win cons? Because that's kind of what
Maybe
I'm
now
just
would be a
getting.
good time for MK to kind of like list out what Sauron's potential win cons are.
Yeah, so in general, Sauron has a handful of ways to get to the victory. He has a number of ways to bypass Ganondorf's body regardless of AP, though you can probably argue relatively similar stats across the board. The soul transfer thing, like worked with the Deku Scrub, where he could split Ganon's body and soul. He can absorb Ganon's soul and kill him that way, like happened with Yuga. He could potentially steal the Triforce, which is basically just an immediate win button, like he was able to split things with Celebrimbor and Altariel, and has also generally worked, like Herbo himself confirmed. The Black Breath can probably destroy Ganondorf's body. Sauron's spirit is a bit inconsistent, but is generally able to tank hits from being far tougher than him, such as Manwë, or more famously, the attack from Eru Iluvatar. Regardless of how you look at it, that was still a very impressive showing and not something Ganon would be able to punch through very quickly. So all things considered, Sauron just outlasts Ganon. Worst case scenario, he's able to overcome Gloom. Absorbing Ganon is an immediate win button. Stealing the Triforce is an immediate win button. The Black Breath can very reliably destroy Ganon's body. Splitting his body and soul will get rid of that as well. Let me look through my notes. I think I had some other stuff, but let me check. He can destroy the sword, the sages, and basically all of Ganon's weapons except for Gloom, and even then,
Did you
Ganon would
say
have to take
absorb
time to
gloom?
reform them. Yeah, I think Sauron can absorb Ganon.
No,
Of course,
I
Ganon
thought you said
absorbs.
sound absorb gloom.
Oh,
Because like if you
and
absorb gloom, that's like counterintuitive.
let's see, looking through.
Also,
Oh yeah, I was
when you
also
refer to
going to
the
point out one last
go
thing
on.
in Sauron's favor, if my mic is working. We don't actually see Ganon battle Midna as a spirit in Twilight Princess, so we don't actually have confirmation that if Ganon loses his body, we have no confirmation he can use all of his hacks or stats. We know he beat Midna, but we don't know if he's just passively going to be emanating gloom by that point or using his Triforce magic or what have you. So it would probably be a lot easier for Sauron to win at that point once both their bodies are compromised, making a fusion all the easier, or stealing the Triforce or what have you. And additionally, which has been brought up a lot for Sauron, when Ganon reformed his body in Twilight Princess, he was also weakened. He wasn't able to retake his beast form in that game and could only take on his Garuda warlock form, at which point he died shortly after and the Triforce fizzled out. So fighting
There's an
or
issue there.
eliminating Ganondorf's body through any of the means I provided would actually take a massive toll on Ganon as well. So outlasting Ganon is a legitimate option, and sooner or later, Ganon's just going to get absorbed. He's going to have his body removed. He's going to get killed with the Black Breath. He's going to lose the Triforce potentially if he gets too weak. There are just a lot of options, and given Sauron's ability to just shut down basically all of Ganon's options, it's just going to happen, and it's probably not going to take long because Sauron's going to go for those options pretty quickly.
I think now is the time for us to
So,
get to our final segment, where this is where we do our final arguments. So I'm gonna throw the poll up into the chat, and
Somebody needs to kidnap Advert and get him back in here so he can vote.
yeah, tell he doesn't even need to get back in here as long as he's watching. He can just DM me what his vote is if he can't come in. So, Hiley and Kerbo, you have the floor to say whatever you want to say as your final argument, and then MK will go after.
All right. So you mentioned like you kind of okay. So you went over the points. Was it absorb, candle source, heal Triforce, splitting body? Okay. Just going through them really quick. The Black Breath has an issue with the whole gloom stuff, especially if it's like interactive atom. And since, oh, by the way, the Black Breath is not as potent as you think it is because contextually speaking, it causes chills and it does not. It causes a brief period of unconsciousness, followed by bad dreams and a state of agitation. It's not as bad as you think make it out to be because that's like contextually like it's meant to incapacitate most foes, right? Like it's not as potent as you think it is. Like it's just gonna instantaneously just absorb, like murder his body. That's completely false, actually. Another aspect, the issue with the whole his body like destroying weapons thing. Obviously you got the gloom issues. Obviously you got those aspects, but you fundamentally can't really combat the aspect of like gloom itself will still afflict his body and his soul, right, to a point where he will be weakened. And every single instance where his body is destroyed, he runs the fuck away. He does not actually use his abilities at all in his spiritual forms. He is literally limited to coercion and manipulation in his spirit forms. That is what he has to do to survive and like reform itself, right? Especially with the fact of like he never actually used his abilities as a spirit form except for running away and like minor manipulations, right? Another thing for the whole like Ganondorf thing, you didn't really address the like the goddesses also protecting him, which would kind of like, beat it out because like his like as long as he has the Triforce and as long as he like is Ganondorf, he will still be protected by the soul, right? And that still is a contest of the wills, right? So that'd be a lot harder than you think. Also, to the fact that Celebrimbor was like wielding the ring against Sauron, right? And I mentioned it before, but like he had to like sever the ring in order to overpower him, and even then, that was because Celebrimbor was trying to overpower Sauron itself, right? So it was kind of a process there because he had his ring severed, So I'm not really quite sure about the result if Celebrimbor didn't, still possess the ring, right? Hell, it is even noted that if you possess the ring, you are fully capable of beating Sauron. By the way, like hell, there's other parts with like, let me find it. Like, honestly, this is a lot of reading. Like for example, Galadriel, she could have wielded the ring and supplanted Sauron. That's noted by Tolkien, but she knew it was not so. Her rejection of the ring was based on thought and resolve. So, genuinely speaking, if you have enough resolve and have enough power, you can resist like Sauron's like will, right? And if his will to absorb that is resisted. The Steel and Triforce thing, that's kind of a weakened thing. So, as for the like regeneration thing, the time span of like when Ganondorf like killed Midna, or I guess defeated Midna, or more accurate, was a very very quick time frame that it ended up here, because that makes sense because Tears of the Kingdom. But anyway, the Secret Stone thing was it multiplies his power, so he'd still have the power, right?
What was that?
But hello, Ganondorf, that was
Was
loud.
That.
That was like a I don't know what that was. Anyway, the point is like this: the basic win con for Ganondorf is just to beat his physical form, right? And from doing that, he's afflicted with gloom, right? And from doing that, his spirit is weakened. And as it's noted, hell, even when his physical form was defeated and he ran the fuck away, that wasn't a form that was weakened, right? He just had his physical form defeated and he ran away and took over 1,000 years to like regenerate. You mentioned the whole Eru taking a hit, but like that's not really founded at all, because I'm pretty sure you're referring to the downfall in Numenor and how Eru sent the flood. But that's not really constituted as Eru attacking him. Like, no, that's not how it worked out, because text wise, it was the land enveloping Sauron, and the actual like land in doing that killed Sauron's physical body. Like it was completely crushed, right? So to suggest that like Sauron can like survive Eru is not really founded, especially due to the fact that like the actual like what he was killed by was being crushed by Numenor, right? So no, that's not how that works. So that doesn't really track. Is the issue?
All right. We can move on to MK's final argument. And the poll is incredibly close.
Well,
Hello?
Did
I'm
someone
not.
just
I'm
get
not gonna. I'm
bombed?
not gonna question it.
Okay,
Whose
yeah,
parents are fighting?
yeah. That's this. This
We're
is
in
Who's
okay.
together.
debating
I live
while
in
his
a I
parents
live
are
in a
fighting?
freshman dorm, so like occasionally during streams, you just hear like people in the hallways just like shouting at each other for whatever reason.
Dear
Eagles.
That's
God,
fair.
whose divorce are you witnessing?
I don't know.
Anyhow,
Man. My college is fucking crazy. Okay, like earlier today, like the fire alarm went off. Like, and this is like
all
the
right.
fifth time this has happened this week. So like, fucking hell.
All right, MK.
I'll keep this short and sweet. I think most everything has been made pretty concise by this point. It kind of feels like a debate of yaha and nuh-uh at this point. I think both Ganon and Sauron have relatively similar arguments you can make for scaling. Not Ganondorf. Sauron's arguments with things like Osei or Caligan the Black are probably superior to most arguments you can make for Ganondorf physically, unless you lean really hard into the Blood Moon, which is much more of a magical feat. Sauron has the tools to counter and resist every single hack Gloom has displayed. The only one you could maybe argue is its life essence draining, which, given Sauron's longevity and the length of which he's been able to expend his life energy throughout Middle-earth's history, even pouring so much of it into the ring, he should be able to resist Gloom just fine for an extensive period of time, more than long enough to pull off his own win conditions. Sauron's spirit has more than several displays of being absolutely blasted by all sorts of things. He can absolutely survive an onslaught from Ganondorf, regardless of stats. The Sword of Sages and all of Ganondorf's weaponry, barring maybe Gloom weapons, will be destroyed on use, and Gloom would take time to be recreated, which is precious time for Sauron to utilize. Ganondorf's body can be destroyed or eliminated through numerous hacks that Sauron consistently uses, some of which are even passive and don't even require activation, such as the Black Breath. And Sauron has numerous ways to defeat Ganondorf in a spiritual battle. He has actually displayed many more uses of his hacks as a spirit. Can absorb Ganondorf's soul, which is an immediate win button, given Ganon has displayed vulnerability to that exact thing. He can steal the Triforce with his various hacks. In general, I would just argue it is an extremely close fight, but basically any argument you can make for one, you can make for the other across the stats arguments. Sauron is tough enough to survive any physical attacks Ganondorf might utilize. Sauron is probably a bit smarter and would utilize his win conditions a bit sooner, and his Black Breath and weapons destruction are both passive, helps out a lot. He can survive gloom, he can escape from the still world pretty easily, and even if he did get there, that's a bit of a debate, but he probably wouldn't even be got to begin with thanks to his teleportation spamming, and also that those portals are honestly kind of slow. And he just has the right buttons to win the fight at a much quicker and more reliable pace than Ganondorf has to use his, as Ganondorf's own early win condition buttons are generally resisted or countered, making it where slightly more often than not, Sauron is going to pull out ahead, using his win cons quicker, faster, and more reliably, having the ability to buy the time he needs to absorb Ganon's soul or infect him or steal the Triforce or what have you, at which point Ganondorf just loses.
Interesting.
I mean, I have points against a lot of those, but like, can we just like
your closing arguments, Turbo?
Exactly,
We gotta
yeah.
vote.
Exactly, like it's gonna
Yeah.
go back and forth now.
Yeah, like that was the last thing we could say on the matter.
Because, like, this cast has been going on for almost 3 hours at this point.
Right? It's just a matter of
Dorky, based on what you've heard today,
Oh my god.
what's your verdict?
No pressure.
There is a lot of stuff I didn't actually expect Sauron to have, and sorry, words are leaving me for a second. My brain's a bit fried. There's definitely some interesting stuff brought up that I didn't either consider or know about, and that does make me think it's closer. Though I do think I still slightly buy some more of Ganon's stuff, and I think I'll probably vote him a little bit more times than not.
What about this time?
Alright.
Yes.
So we got one vote for Ganondorf. Dark Lore Master, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking Sauron. I think speed is like relatively equal, and while Ganondorf probably way stronger due to Sauron's own how soul based he is, it's kind of like the Ganondorf being way stronger doesn't really matter. So in the end, it come down to hacks, and I think Sauron is way better at using his own win cons in order to be able to like pull out the win. So I think Sauron's winning more times than not.
All right. What do I think's a better win con? Splashing fucking gloom everywhere or taking a soul? I don't know why, but I have a hard time imagining the soul thing working. I'm not sure why I have a hard time. It seems like it shouldn't be a big issue, but I think he can get out of the still world, so I don't think that's a win con. I think Ganondorf wins any physical brawl they have. So it's like, will the gloom diminish Sauron to nothing, or will Sauron take his soul? That's the question.
Do people get to vote on ties?
If we tied, then it goes to the
this
chat
is
vote.
Yeah.
due to how
do the
casts
tie.
are structured with like jury and stuff, it's impossible for us to come to a draw since we always have an odd number of votes going around.
Gotcha. All right, continue. Sorry about that.
I think Sauron can, from what I've heard during this cast, Sauron can get out of the gloom, but I'm not really sure if Ganon can really like deal with the soul manipulation that Sauron has. So I think I have to go with Sauron tonight. Yeah, I think they're both valid win conditions. I just think it's easier for Sauron to do soul stuff. Even though that feels
Wait.
weird for me to say. It doesn't feel correct for me to say Ganon just steals his soul. But with the information that Ganon gets a soul stolen. But with the information I have to work with tonight, I think Sauron just does that. So I vote for Sauron. Advert, what do you think?
Oh God. Okay, so starting with stats, it's what we can say will more likely work is that Sauron stealing Ganon's soul is likely to work on Ganon. Ganon's gloom working on Sauron is also, I'd say, likely to work because Sauron has never had to deal with something specifically like that before. So it kind of gets convoluted. I'd say more often than not, probably have to lean Sauron because we use that soul trick in an actual fight, while many of Ganon's win cons were only theoretical, hypothetical, or otherwise unsuccessful. Sure, there's the occasional instance. I'm sure Kuro has like 1,000 secret instances we don't know about, but from what information we've been provided so far, Saurons are just more clearly existent. He has done them. He knows when and how to use them. He seems to be more prepared going into this fight. So I'd say I vote Sauron.
All right. And closing the poll, we have Ganondorf winning the poll by 53% to Sauron taking 47%.
Oh, well, that was really close.
That was back and forth a lot.
Alright.
I do not have the words to properly explain this cast. I'm very tired.
All the
But I
time.
think you two are
Yeah, I think we've
consummate
officially
professionals
crossed the 3-hour
did a
mark.
very good job. I wish I had known the level of detail we could have potentially gone into, and I perhaps would have prepped ahead with some more specific categories and topics. But y'all definitely know what you're talking about. We got the right people for the job.
You.
Good
This is
cast,
definitely a
everyone.
very bloggable matchup. if you like really want to go.
I never really,
Yeah,
It-
or
I
maybe,
never really get into this.
or maybe
MP is probably better at the public
Versus
speaking
shows
thing.
would do this episode. Maybe something like Death Battle or something
I
else. Sure.
feel like one of
Yeah.
these days it's going to get a really deep dive, be it by Death Battle or like a major blog like Bang or G1. I feel like it's
Yeah.
just an inevitable because it is a very popular matchup these days. It's probably the single biggest run back push for both.
It
Like,
definitely
I
feels
guess
like the one
maybe
for
a
both at this
Dracula
point.
rematch, but I don't feel like that has.
I
the
don't feel
same
like
push
people are really
have been
asking
given
for that
Sean.
much these days.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think like if people want like Ganondorf and Dracula back, they're probably gonna ask for different episodes because like Ganondorf versus Dracula is already like a very, very good episode. So like we don't need to see it redone since like it's already kind of perfect. So just
So apparently, the stream has been dying for like the last 15 minutes and been like glitchy and buffering to all hell. So in case anyone didn't see the entire verdict and final argument section, to sum it up in 1 minute, Ganondorf has ways to potentially deal with Sauron via Gloom and maybe the Still World, although that seems less certain. Sauron has ways to either absorb or like steal Ganondorf's soul, it ended up being 3 votes for Sauron, 2 for Ganondorf. One of the closest polls in the show history. Very close on all fronts.
What were the
Ganondorf
numbers? I
takes stats.
didn't see the chat.
it was 53 to 47.
Ooh, Jesus.
Nice.
So yeah, I think that I just want to end the stream now.
yeah, that's fair.
Anyone
Alright.
have
I'm
any issues with
pressing.
me just pressing the end broadcast button?
Yeah,
Nah, you're